But what I was gonna tell you, everything that makes he comes in today. Homework, he's never on his own, ever. But he's coming around really good. I'm really proud of him. I mean, really bad. He's sweet, but he can be bad. When he gets in that recess, he came home one day and said, teacher said, my recess privilege has been taken away. I said, good, just so you can't watch it.
That'll teach you a few times, huh?
He's like, I ain't worried about it.
Hammond City Council Public Hearing Special Meeting Agenda, Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022, 5:30 p.m. Roll call, please.
Councilman Andrews.
Present.
Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Present.
Councilman Wells.
Present.
Councilman DeVittorio.
Present.
Councilman Leon.
Public hearing number 1.
An ordinance to adopt a redistricting plan for the city of Hammond. Bill Blair with Strategic Demographics.
Let me get this thing started. Good evening, council and the public. We're here to move along the process of redistricting the City Council of Hammond. I was here last week to do a much more thorough introduction, explanation of the law and the criteria needed to redistrict the city. I'm going to make this a little more brief. This presentation, which I gave last week, plus maps and statistics are available on the Hammond City website, so any interested parties have that available to them to look at. So let's get to the gritty details. I know everybody's here for my presentation, right? So I'll make this brief. I think I've got more important things than me to talk about. So we're going to skip a lot of the background, so maybe I'll just highlight a couple of things. We've had a compressed time period. Census was 7 months late getting to the state to do this work. That's why we're sort of a compressed timeline. We're further compressed by the Home Rule Charter for Hammond, which demands that we adopt a plan by May 7th, which is next Sunday. But we're here today with 2 different competing plans to successfully redistrict Hammond. Both of these plans take into account the 2 main things we have to do when redistricting any jurisdiction in this state, much less this country, which is achieve population equality for one. So you get about a 5% deviation on either side of an ideal number. For the seat of Hammond, that's taking the population of Hammond from the 2020 census, dividing it by 5, gives you an ideal number. And then you get about 5% on either side of that as an allowable deviation to achieve what the Supreme Court considers to be population equality. Secondarily, we also have to make sure that we adhere to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Essentially, that means if we have majority districts in the city of Hammond, it is incumbent upon us to maintain those and create new ones where possible within the acceptable framework of the Supreme Court decision-making. In both the plans that are in front of you today, we've achieved all these goals, population equality and protection under the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So let's look at some maps. You can go through this later, and if you have, it's a cure for insomnia, some of this stuff, I promise you. So here's the census data from Hammond from 2010 to 2020. Essentially, the racial breakout remains pretty consistent in Hammond, except for a little decrease in white-only population and an increase in other population. Demographers are still debating about what that means. It's seen all over the state and all over the country. It's mainly due to some question changes between 2010 and 2020 about allowing people more flexibility in responding to what their racial categories are. And we think that's why there's some discrepancies there, but regardless, it is what it is. Here is the current districts of Hammond with the 2020 census population included. And you see that 4 of the 5 were out of that deviation. Some too high, 3, 5, some too low, 4, and 1. So our job, my job, was to assist the city council in changing their boundaries to achieve that population equality while maintaining adherence to the Voting Rights Act, which I believe we have done. Now, I didn't just stroll in here and present the council with 2 plans. These plans are after lengthy discussion with the city council members and their vision of what the representation of Hammond should look like. And while there are different competing plans, both achieve the necessary requirements of Voting Rights Act and population equality. This is Plan A. This is a more substantial reimagining of the representation in Hammond. It makes substantial changes to District 2, going out to the southeastern portion of Hammond as the main big change. I should also say here that anytime you redistrict in a municipality like this, we can't go annex other parts of Tangipahoa Parish, right? So we're left with these city boundaries on the exterior, and we have to make our changes to achieve our aims in the middle of the city. And unfortunately, District 2 is in the middle of the city, so unfortunately, it's always going to be impacted by anything we were going to do in the city of Hammond. I'll discuss the statistics in a moment after I show you the Plan 2, Plan B. Again, a bit more in line with the current boundaries, but still make substantial changes to achieve that population equality and adherence to the Voting Rights Act. Now, both of these plans maintain 2 minority districts, District 1, District 3, and District 4 becomes more competitive in a potential black-white contest of an election, with both the black and white populations being under 50%. So I think we've achieved what we need to statistically and legally, and now it is just a decision-making on the council to determine which of these 2 avenues they wish to go. That's the long and short of it, everyone. I'm happy to take any questions from the council or even the public.
Anyone from the public have a question they would like to ask? Could you step to the mic, please? Give your name and address.
John Harden, 211 West Charles Street, Hammond, Louisiana, 70401. Why is it so hard to find out information before it happens? I mean, it wasn't on the Daily Star. I found out from a neighbor we have a discussion about redistricting. It's in the clouds. Why?
You're referring to the meeting tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Last Tuesday night, we made a decision to have another meeting.
Mm-hmm.
We sent the information in to the Daily Star.
I didn't see it.
I'm explaining it.
Okay.
Okay. We sent the information in to the Daily Star. It did not make Thursday's paper.
Okay.
Okay. So it was put in on Saturday's paper from what they told me.
All right.
So that's how we ended up in that situation.
Okay.
The information was sent to them. It just didn't make the paper.
That's a bad excuse, really.
Well,
It ought to be at 2 weeks in advance, not Saturday before this meeting.
Well, according to the charter and what we were trying to do,
Yeah.
that was the time constraint that we had in order to get this done by May 7th.
Okay,
to
that's
be certi-
weak. That's weak. It is.
Well, you asked for an answer, and I'm trying to
Well,
provide.
that's a bad answer. That's not a good answer. Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Could you step to the mic, please, and give your name and address?
This one here?
Yes.
Jeffrey Dameron, 408 West Robert Street in Hammond. Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with him somewhat. The length of time, a lot of people weren't aware of this. And then the two plans, one of the plans kind of keeps the district somewhat. Plan B seems to keep them similar to what they are. Plan A just seems drastically different. And that was my concern, was people haven't had a lot of time to see this information to make, their own decisions on it, or, give them time to make their input with you guys. And with one of them changing the district so dramatically, it just seems suspicious to some people. And I mean, I don't know what, led to. I heard there were some time constraints, and what led up to all of those situations. And now with this May 7th hard deadline, but I would like to see the districts to remain like they have been historically and make the adjustments. It just seems like the district, I'm in District 2, it seems like it's getting carved up and separated out. And it's curious to me. And the way everything's kind of played out, so to speak. As a voter, it's just an odd situation. And that's kind of how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I would just like to say, looking at it, John Ignatius, 111 North Magnolia. Looking at it, understand that there needs to be some changes, but I'm in favor of rocking the boat the least possible and to where it affects the least amount of people. We all got to vote for our council person, so it's important that we're able to kind of have a say in that, and I'm very happy and pleased with our representation currently, and I appreciate you, and if at all possible, for that not to change, to rock the boat as least as possible, I think that would be the best decision, so.
Anyone else? Anyone from the council?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ralph?
Ralph Ross, 505 East Robert Street. In the longer presentation that you gave, I remember there were some bullet points about the state requiring that the traditional redistricting criteria be applied. And just to read some of those, it seems to me that A gets away from those. The four were communities of interest, the people who have been voting together and concerned about the issues stay together. Compactness, District 2 just gets ripped into pieces. And then preserving cores of prior districts, which goes to the same thing. So Plan B seems to hit 3 of the 4 traditional criteria, and Plan A seems to not hit but 1, maybe 1. That's all I had to say. Well, I would like to say that it's tough. and increasingly tough for the city of Hammond, or for any city, to get the word out to the public. You know, people don't read the newspaper like they used to. These things get on the web, I mean, and they're posted outside of the meeting. But it's tough. I mean, I feel for you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Roberts. I live at 305 South Cherry Street. And I'd like to ask the council if we do have to make these changes. Plan B seems more reasonable to me. And like the gentleman before said, we voted for our representatives, and I'd like to keep that. So thank you for your consideration for Plan B.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Anyone from the council?
Yeah, I just want to kind of repeat what I previously said. Plan B is the one that I developed with Dr. Blair, also in consultation with Councilman Leon, and then I ran by some of the changes that would affect Councilman Andrews. District 2 requirements of population, however, being in the middle of the city, I have to give up some borders and change those lines. I understand that, and all this requires is a three-person vote, and I think that it is very important that we maintain our lines as much as possible. I have three very large issues with Plan A. I've stated it on Facebook and in the media and in here, but I'm going to say it again just so we can be consistent. I don't want to lose the Murray Park. It's important to me. There have been council members for District 2 who worked hard for some things in that park, such as the skate park, the dog park, and I would like to maintain that as a District 2 projects, and that we have upcoming things coming, and I want to be a part of that. And then also this Plan A brings District 4 into downtown, borders District 4, District 3. Borders Clark Park. It takes in some of the core of my district, being the Higher Cape, the historic district, and the downtown. And I'm adamantly opposed to losing any of that. And I think that consideration should be given for the fact that my district was within the population requirements. And so I'm not going to say deference, but that's the best word. It should be as little impact to me as possible. And so Plan A is a drastic, Dr. Blair, I think you used the word reimagined. I don't agree with that statement. I think it's a drastic change. And two always has to be impacted. And if we're going to use the word reimagined, let's not reimagine it. Let's have it stay as possibly concise as it can. And also, another thing to note, I had talked to former council members about the annexation of Cypress Point Hospital, which is in Plan A supposed to go to District 2. And during the time that was annexed in, the council member for District 3 fought to get that into District 3. So we are stuck with the decisions of the council members that come before us, and I think that that's only fair that we maintain things that they fought for, such as certain things in the park that are in my district and certain areas of the city that are in other people's districts. Thank you.
Anyone else from the council? Thank you, Mr. Blair.
I'll just close by saying that as a contractor for Hammond, I'm agnostic on which plan you adopt, other than that it meets the criteria I specified of population equality and adheres to the Voting Rights Act. And to the gentleman back there, when I'm not here, I work for the legislature. We were around this state advertising on Facebook and in the paper, and we still got terrible attendance for drawing Congress, legislative districts, PSC, and BESI. So it's not just Hammond that has a problem with this, it's everywhere. We're having trouble with this. So thank you for your time.
I got one question. Now that you're up here, I'm thinking when we was in the meeting, you and I stated that I didn't want to go into the Iowa district because I didn't want to interrupt nothing in Ms. Gonzalez's district. So I did state that. Am I right?
I'll have to defer to you since I'm not sure where that is.
Okay, that's across the railroad track.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
No. You were very specific about not wanting to cross the track. Yes, sir.
All right, then. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Yes. Now, this issue tonight will not be voted on until Saturday morning at 9:30 here in the chamber. Okay. All right. Hammond City Council regular session special meeting agenda for Tuesday, May 3rd, 2020. Roll call, please.
Councilman Andrews,
Present.
Councilwoman Gonzalez. Present. Councilman Wells,
Present.
Councilman DiVittorio.
Present.
Councilman Leon.
Prayer. Most gracious, loving, eternal Father, we thank you on this evening. We give you glory and honor and praise, thanking you, Father God, that this is a day that you have made. We shall rejoice and we shall be glad about it. Father, we thank you for your Son, who you offered up a living sacrifice just for us, and we're just so grateful for that. Father, if there's ever a time we need you right now. Father God, I ask you to continue to look upon us, continue to guide us and keep us. I ask you to continue to bless this council, give them wisdom, knowledge from on high, health and strength in their bodies to continue to move forward in the vision and the plan that you have given them to do. I ask that you continue to bless the city administration, continue to give them wisdom and knowledge from on high. Father God, I ask that you continue to bless our city employees, our fire department, our police department, our parks and grounds, everyone that lays a mat out here in the city of Hammond. We just thank you right now. We ask that you continue to bless our city, state, and country. Father God, shine upon us. Keep us right now. We thank you that everything tonight will be done decent in order and pleasing in your sight. Therefore, you will get all glory, you will get all honor and all praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Our Pledge of Allegiance. All veterans and active military, please render the proper salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we move into the reports, I'm going to ask the Charter Review Committee to come up first and give their report.
Good afternoon. Frank DiVittorio, Chair of the Charter Review Committee. Just to introduce myself, Frank DiVittorio, Chair of the Charter Review Committee. The committee was comprised of myself, Leslie Bolner, who was the Secretary, nominated by District 5, Councilman Leons, Ms. Arlene Knighton, who was nominated by District 1, Councilman Andrews, Nick Gagliano, nominated by Councilwoman Gonzalez, District 2, Ms. Tracy Wells, nominated by Councilman Wells, District 3, and Mr. Doug Johnson, nominated by the mayor. I believe several of us are here in attendance tonight as well. Just to give a little background on the process, the Hammond Charter Review Committee was first convened in December of 2020 by a City Council resolution. We held 23 meetings. We're actually, I guess, on 25 now to some extent. At the invitation of the committee and former and present mayors, councilpersons, former charter committee members, other city officials, and the general public were all specifically invited to participate. We held meetings at alternate locations besides just the city council chambers, trying to increase greater public participation. We invited the public for comment by email, and we received presentations from the city attorney, the administration, the city's bond counsel, and a compensation consultant. We delivered the report, I believe it's been several weeks ago now, just a summary of it. The report contained 9 proposed amendments to the Hammond City Charter, 8 recommendations that either did not require amendment to the charter or while unanimously recommended, to some extent, we were not able to obtain unanimity on the full terms. 3 issues are also listed that the committee unanimously agreed warranted further discussion, but were either unable to reach a unanimous resolution on or were unable to complete with the resources and time we had available. The contents of this is something important to, I want to reiterate, everything in this report was unanimously approved as written in the report. This PowerPoint presentation was taken by me from the report, but the actual, most of which was cut and pasted, but the actual report itself in its final version was approved unanimously by the entire committee, including the mayor's nomination. The first proposals involve compensation of the mayor and the council positions. Based upon our review, we were unable to determine any raises that have been given within approximately a decade to the mayor and council. And we were able to engage a consultant through the assistance of the administration. We made attempts to try to locate a consultant through Southeastern. Mr. Johnson actually found a consultant that he had used on a prior committee, Dr. Lawrence Scott, who's a kind of renowned state economist, as well as the administration was able to recommend SSA consultants. We had been advised by the administration that they had used them previously and were working on other things with them, and they came in with a good, I think they were actually the cheapest. So ultimately the city entered into a contract with them. This is not the full report. I think the full report was produced to y'all, and of course we can at some point if you don't have it, if you want another copy of it. But just to kind of give you a little background on how this was comprised. The consultant identified comparable entities for purposes of determining what other municipalities were paying. If you'll notice, this list has Hammond, Alexandria, Slidell, Ruston, Thibodaux, Gonzales, and Zachary. You will not find Baton Rouge on it. You will not find New Orleans on it. You will also not find Tickfall on it because those are not comparable. You will also see additional information contained here, giving some idea of how comparable they really are. For instance, you'll see Alexandria has reported total revenue of $140 million a year, whereas Hammond has 42. Slidell is 72. You can read for yourself there. So you've got variations of city. You've got Hammond's information as well. We've got a reported population of about 20,000 with about total revenue about 42 million a year. And then you can see how that compares to the other municipalities. We did choose, you will see that most of the municipalities have colleges in them. That was done in an attempt to try to address the fact that, Hammond, we believe, has a kind of a substantial population that generally does not get counted. And Alexandria has LSU, Alexandria, Louisiana Tech, Nichols, LSU, Southern. And then this is the comparable, what the other municipalities are paying. As you can see, there's revenue makes a difference, population makes a difference. And so that's just a little background in terms of how these things are compared, and you get out of the report a lot of what you put into it. If we were to compare these numbers to large cities or small towns, obviously it would skew the differences. Proposal number 3, we recommended that the council, so there was an issue that came up regarding the council clerk. There are provisions in the charter that limit the council's involvement and input regarding employees. However, it also provides for the existence of a council clerk. As you can see there, the recommendation was, and these are not recommendations necessarily in ordinance form, they're just substantive. At some point, if you do decide to move forward with any of these at some point, the final enacting language would have to be drafted. The basis for this, is I tried to explain there, involves that, as I said, the charter contains this position. It also contains provisions that limit the involvement or ability to the council members, individual council, or the council as a whole, to be involved in personnel issues, and its attempt to try to clarify that the council clerk is really a council, position that answers to the council. Proposal 4, this is the charter currently provides an ethics provision. This removes it. Now, this is not because we're trying to remove any ethics provisions. It's simply that the state has enacted its own ethics commission and has its own ethics process, and in an attempt to clean up the charter and bring this in line and prevent potential conflicts or conflicting rulings and whatnot, we believe that the city should just defer to the state, and that's what this provides. Also, the charter provides, the current charter provides for a ethics commission, which has actually never been stood up by the city anyway. Provision 5 involves, currently the charter provides that all department heads should reside within 5 miles. That's a blanket provision to all department heads, regardless of what their position is, whether it's something like information technology or planning and zoning. And as you can see there was a basis. The basis for this was there was public input, significantly public input, that there was an importance, particularly in some of these department head positions, that being immersed in the city is worth is a factor that should be seriously taken into account. As I said, the 2-mile radius or distance was unanimously adopted by the council. There was much discussion over that. It's currently 5 miles. There were opinions and factors that came in from larger than that, smaller than that, a radius as opposed to the nearest point. This is a map of the city, and as you can see, it's got interesting tentacles and shapes and whatnot, where you can be, there's significant parts of the city that are not particularly close to each other, as well as, depending on what point you move away from, you get substantially further from others. The lighting in here is not particularly well, but if you see the city down there at the bottom, there's a blue line that kind of is diagonal from the top right of the city to the bottom left of the city. That line is from the green arrow at the left edge of the city to the most extended green arrow to the bottom of it is 2 miles. That's where that would put you. Now, in the proposed recommendation, you have to also live in Tangipahoa Parish, so that would actually back you up a little bit to within the 2 miles from that edge. What's interesting is if you stretched 2 miles from one side of the city to the other side of the city, you're actually about 20 miles apart. So it's just, so the point of this being is that and depending on how you line those up, you could actually be at or near Matalbany or Tickfall, whatever that next municipality is there. There was also some stringent opinions and suggestions put in that this should be done away with completely, and that it limits the ability to hire and attract good personnel. That is a factor. But as I said, generally speaking, the majority public input was that the benefits of having people in the city outweighs the difficulties. Proposal 6 was for the department head, subject to confirmation by the council. The council members shall receive at least 30 days prior notice to any proposed council confirmation hearing, information and documentation concerning the potential candidate, including but not limited to the candidate's name, application, background check, criminal check, resume, resume, references, and qualifications. There was substantial public input on this, in that the belief was that the council should act as a undertake some due diligence in terms of approving these nominations. If that was not their purpose, then the confirmation process should just be removed. The committee also believes that it might be beneficial for the council to simply just implement this by ordinance or a resolution. Do not believe a true charter amendment is necessary for this. Proposal number 7 is to amend the charter to provide for a planning and zoning commission to consist of 5 persons, each appointed by the mayor, subject to confirmation by the council. The members of the commission shall be chosen by the mayor, 1 from each council district. Each member shall be an elector or owner of real estate in the city. There was overwhelming frustration, I believe, with how this process works, the current process, in terms of the time it takes, the conflicts, the representation of the members. There were lots of issues that people had with this, and there were lots of discussions as to how it could be fixed, from changing how the nominations come to be, changing from the qualifications. However, some of this is complicated by state statute. If you notice, this is just a random agenda. Whatever's on it is irrelevant to the point here, in that there is actually a Board of Adjustments, a zoning commission, and a planning commission that all are comprised currently of the same people, but could be separated out. They also have different state statutes that have different provisions that are not necessarily all, well, I guess they're not mutually exclusive, but they also do not align perfectly either. So some of the criteria or make it difficult to comply with all of them if you're trying to maintain a single board. Proposal number 8 is to add the formation of an advisory committee which could create a community forum for discussion of community concerns. The committee would meet quarterly and take minutes of discussions, but not have any power of investigation or subpoena. The committee would not take any votes, but would keep minutes and submit the notes from the meetings to the city council and mayor for review. It provides for 1-year terms. It provides for various stakeholders and interests to suggest nominations, including the Chamber of Commerce, the NAACP, the Downtown Development District, Southeastern. This was a concern. This was a public kind of driven concern. Many people expressed their opinion and feelings that their concerns regarding things are not being heard. A lot of it did seem to center on the police chief issue, but it was not by any means limited to that. There was concern apparently expressed to many people, some members of the committee, and as well as some people who spoke at the meeting, of fear of coming forward and being heard or being retaliated against if they spoke out. And there was much discussion had about this as to whether it was necessary to be a charter, included in the charter. I would say unanimously, the committee thought it was an important issue, thought it was a worthwhile undertaking, but it also could be done by ordinance or possibly even resolution, but certainly by ordinance if y'all chose to do that. And ultimately, the committee did entirely, I believe, feel that this was something that really was important to the public. Proposal number 9 is a charter amendment to require annual evaluations for each department head designated in the charter, which shall be disseminated to the mayor, council, and public. There was a lot of public input and discussion related to accountability and responsiveness by the city. A lot of these things a lot of the proposals did ultimately end up centering, gravitating toward things that increase transparency, increase accountability, and increase the ability of the public to understand and have knowledge and input in what's going on in the actual operation of the city. Now, this is what we styled these as recommendations. These are not things that are proposed amendments to the charter for various reasons, as we said earlier. This recommendation is, there was a unanimous recommendation, and when I use the term unanimous, I mean the entire 6-member committee. That recommendation, the council consider retaining a consultant to review the budget contents for compliance with the existing requirements of the charter. Based upon public input and questions, if you recall, the charter, which I guess y'all are about to undertake soon, includes budget provisions regarding the preparation of the budget, adoption of the budget, contents of the proposed budget document, and it's fairly detailed. I've kind of highlighted, or dark, what am I doing here? For instance, the budget document, the process here, the proposed budget shall contain, number 6 is in bold and dark there, such other information as may be requested by the council. Whatever is proposed to you as the proposed budget, if it's missing something or doesn't have something or you want something else, the charter actually took the care and foresight in advance to say, if you ask for it, you shall receive. That's what number 6 is there. Part of number 4 in B here involves estimated annual cost of operating and maintaining the facilities to be constructed. Traditionally, I don't think I've ever seen, and I don't think there was even any dispute that this has not been historically included in the proposed budget. If you buy a building or build a whatever, it costs money to operate it, particularly depending on the type of thing it is. And so that's a factor, and this is already in the charter. This is the original charter drafters believed that not only the cost of acquisition, but the cost of ownership was important in evaluating budget expenditures. And so the purpose of the consultant would be to further advise y'all on what's supposed to be in the budget, what's in the budget, and whether or not it's there. Recommendation number 2 is the department organizational structure. The charter actually contains a list of department heads that existed when it was originally created, and a process for changing those. This is the list. Now, the city attorney, whether they're really a department head, may be somewhat debatable, but it's included in that kind of area of the charter, so that's why it's listed there. But you have the director of administration, and you'll notice if you actually review this document, the titles and some of the descriptions in them, the descriptions kind of vary from what we might call them today to some extent. If it provides for a director of administration, but if you read some of the duties of it, it really sounds more like a CFO controller than a chief of staff, so to speak. The police department, fire department, public works department, utilities department, recreation department, personnel department, we would call that human resources now. This is what the city's website list is, departments, which is not necessarily the same thing. I mean, the website can be listed to ease the public in finding things, so it may not follow the same format, but it is something worth relevant. And then this was the city organizational chart that we were provided. The department heads, there's no, well, it speaks for itself. That's the city organizational chart that was provided. There is a process for changing an administrative reorganization. It can be initiated by the mayor and provides for proposals, meetings. It can also be initiated by the council. The council does have the power to request a reorganization plan, and it provides that a timeline for when things must be submitted and public hearings must be conducted. And it also provides for a 2/3 majority vote of the full council. When we dug into this, the question was raised, well, how did we get to the current department schedule or department organization? And it was, well, it's done through ordinance. Well, this process is not just the ordinary ordinance adoption process. It's got extra waiting periods, public input periods, and it also requires a 2/3 vote. I don't know if that's been done or not. So that was why it ended up in the recommendations, something else to look into. We also had some other recommendations. Recommendation 3, the master plan, it came to our attention that it's probably time to re-update that again. Recommendation 4, again, in terms of transparency and accessibility of information, we recommended that the council consider action requiring all of its meetings, minutes, ordinances, resolutions, codes, technical regulations be available online in a searchable format for public access and review. There used to be minutes and agendas on there forever. I haven't been able to find them recently. Recommendation number 5, department heads. This was something that the committee did. This was one of the things that there was, in some concept, unanimity, but not in terms of the final implementation. And what I mean by that is, all department heads shall be appointed by the mayor and shall serve at the pleasure of the mayor, subject to council approval. Said department head shall be subject to reconfirmation upon the renewal of each mayoral term. Meaning, when you're appointed, it's for a term, just like the mayor and the council. And at the new term, whether it's the same mayor elected again or another mayor, that everybody has to be reconfirmed. There was the discussion, the deviation went in terms of whether or not whether there should be some re-approval, so to speak, but whether it should be just a normal, simple majority passes, whether it should be something that requires essentially more than 3 votes to remove, whether it's styled as it would take 4 to remove or only 2 to reconfirm. It's debatable, but it was just that there was some belief that there should be some deference given to the people that are already serving in the position. Recommendation 6 again goes back to public records, requiring that an independent audit, that the independent audit required by Section 2-07 be made available to the city website. I mean, of course, it's a public record available, but it was recommended that should be, again, more accessible. Term limits came up. We did take public input on that, and it was as could be expected. There was everything from there should be no term limits, there should be 1 term limit. Ultimately, the committee just took the position that they should be left alone. The question of how investigations are initiated by the council was discussed. Ultimately, we ended up suggesting that it just be left unchanged. Issues are something that we really did not take a position on, but came to our attention and had enough public input or discussion that we felt warranted being communicated to you directly. And one of them is the city's ability to incur debt. My understanding is historically there had been the position that the council and the city could essentially issue bonds without an election, or in some conditions without an election unless required by the state statutes. This changed a few years ago now at this point, based on an attorney general opinion that was issued on our charter, actually on the Hammond city charter specifically. And so the discussion was raised, should it be easier to borrow money? Was it fine? It does increase cost to borrow if you have to have an election. It does increase the timeline to borrow if you have to. It does also increase, public accountability or public input in the matter. There have been some projects that, if we're talking about $100,000 or $200,000 or even, in terms of the city size budget, maybe $500,000, that may not be warranted for the cost of having to go through an election that may not just be undertaken for that fact. So there was at one point a proposal or a suggestion, not a proposal, there was a suggestion that it should be just simply removed and deferred to the council and administration. The mayor actually spoke, didn't out against that, his appointee, and I would say there was substantial public input that was probably going too far. One suggestion that was raised was a hybrid type system, creating a threshold where y'all could do it without an election, kind of to address the concern I had. The bond counsel advised that while that he was not aware of any municipality that had such a system, that in terms of the law, he didn't see any reason why that would be illegal or prohibited. So where that threshold is probably more of a political question left for y'all. And accountability of the police chief. Again, this was something that came up by numerous speakers in the public. Ideas of potentially making the position elected or being able to recall them by some type of public petition were discussed. Issues of community policing. There were calls reiterated again, asking for true community policing with national standards and a systemic, citywide, permanent basis. Mr. Johnson actually spoke pretty passionately about this, having been a resident and having been involved in connections, I believe, with law enforcement throughout his life here in Hammond. That's it. If there's any questions, I'll address them. And there's also, I don't know if any of the other members have anything to say or.
Nick Gagliano, excuse me, 902 West Colorado Street. I was on the committee. I served half of the committee. I took over for Mr. Chris Broadwater when he has other job obligations that took him off the committee. So Councilwoman Gonzalez asked me to fill in, which I was glad to do. Several things I would like to bring up is one, on the council, is that the committee really did a lot of work. Not saying that I did, but they did before. And so would like to, my opinion is that y'all make a decision whether you go forward or not on these recommendations and just don't let it, sit on the shelf, so to speak. And looking at deadlines, we have 2 municipal elections coming up. November 8th is the municipal election, which everybody here will be running, and December 10th. So the deadline to get it on the ballot for the November 8th is June 22nd, and for December 10th, it's October 17th. So to give you those deadlines, if you want to move yay or nay on anything, just want to make that aware to that. And lastly, thank you, Council President Andrews, for putting us here and not last. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I just have a couple of comments I'd like to share with you. I'm probably one of the oldest folks in this room. My name's Doug Johnson, second generation businessman here in town, 611 West Church Street. My late mother and Judge Leon Ford and Jay Seal and Mayor Charlie McCaskill went around the state looking for a organizational chart to replace the police jury form of government in our city and in our parish because it had become corrupt. There were kingpins rather than public servants, and they worked very hard to get the charter put in place in this town. And I have to tell you, as a citizen, I think it has done very well in providing for the needs of all citizens in our community, both on a parish level and on a city level. I was appointed by the mayor. I know Pete fairly well. We live down the street from each other, but didn't know at all what I was doing getting into this. I was surprised when I got to the first couple of meetings to learn that the mayor's appointment had no vote on this commission. In fact, I was shocked. And I didn't ask him about it, but I did ask Andre about it. It seemed to me that it was not only a conflict of interest, but it was disenfranchising the voters because the highest elected official in our town, his representative, did not have a vote on this commission. I'll be honest with you, I thought about resigning at times, but I didn't because the members of this commission were doing such good work. They put their heart and soul in it. Frank DiVittoria did a great job. There was a lot of conflict and discussions that took place. So I hadn't said anything to this point, but I am going to, after this meeting, petition the Attorney General because there appeared to be a conflict of interest in members appointed to this commission. I think it's a conflict of interest when you have a relative of a council person sitting on this commission. I think it's just fundamentally, from a business perspective, not the right thing to do. So having said that, we did good work. The work product that you got, I think, will serve the next 10 years. I just want to make certain that when the next 10 years comes up and the next person, that's the mayor's appointment, has a vote on this commission, and that the makeup of this commission have no family ties to a council person. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public have a question? Okay. Anyone from the council?
I have a quick question.
Okay.
So with regards to the department heads, it was mentioned several times that there was lots of public input. And I know that I attended a lot of these meetings and we didn't have very many people. So could you elaborate more on the public input that was perhaps received by the committee? Because that's not reflected in the minutes, and it's not. So I'm just curious about that public input.
Well, there was, on which particular issue? Just the public, just the department heads?
On the
in general? There were
department
several.
heads and where they reside.
Okay. So originally, as I said, the meetings began when we started out, there was substantial public input. And as we rolled on through, the public input, of course, did decrease because of some of the reasons earlier, I guess, assume y'all were talking about in terms of getting public access out there. I mean, I don't have names off the cuff here. I mean, there are minutes, substantial numbers of pages of minutes. There were points relayed by various members of the committee that were relayed to them. You know, so I can't, as I sit here, these meetings went on over 2 years. I mean, if you want me to tell you on June 1st, 2001, Sue Ann said this, you know, I can't do that. If you, I will say that everything in that, from my memory, everything in that report had public input, took public input, and was raised on that. If you're talking about the the radius thing, there was it came up. There was discussion about that, and to be honest with you, I personally was somewhat hesitant to join that majority because there are issues with attracting people, and also all the department heads are not the same. It's, you know, I don't know that it is as important for the information technology person, who a lot can be done remotely, to live in the city limits within Hammond or even in the state for that matter. I do think, and you know, even today I was discussing the report. I was going over my PowerPoint with some people beforehand, that discussing how it looked. And when we got to that one, that was one of the ones they said, yeah, you know, it is important to have these people in there. So, I mean, as far as specifics of it, I don't know. But in terms of, do I stand by the fact that there was public input discussing the fact that having people immersed in understanding the culture of Hammond, who are making planning decisions, zoning decisions, you know, and some of the other particular department heads, important, yes, there was public input on that. And I mean, I could probably take a poll here even and see, but I mean, I think that there was definitely public input that believed that being geographically here, even in 2022, where you can zoom into wherever, being on the ground and being on downtown Hammond, walking the streets, smelling the air, you know, means something.
I'd like to say thank you for everything that y'all was doing, everything y'all done. This SSA consult. I say thank you for this, and the reason I said thank you for this, because the cities that y'all compared it to, the area that y'all compared it to, kind of population close to Hammond versus, and it's gonna be a big discussion, versus what I got right here, the comparison to Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Mobile, Alabama, Jackson, Mississippi.
So Councilman Wells, I'll add this. That consultant came from the administration. They were recommended by the administration. The actual composition of that was led by, to my knowledge, pretty much exclusively by the committee itself, though. The administration recommended them and put us in touch with them. We got a price, and we handled the process of getting that report created. We did do I don't remember if we did an actual, published a request for proposal or not, because it's professional services, so that's not really required. But we did do an exhaustive search trying to find a consultant. We went to Southeastern. I personally, I think Mr. Broadwater, Ms. Councilwoman Gonzalez's original nominee, had some contacts with the college and PAR, that's one of these think tank groups, and some other people, and he tried very hard to find us somebody to do it, to do the report. I personally got, at some point when he got off, he kind of kicked over the names from the college to me. I called several of them myself. They gave me other ones. Ultimately, I think Mr. Johnson, as I said earlier, so he was on some other compensation committee previously, and reached out to Dr. Scott, who was just, like I said, he's probably the preeminent economist in the state of Louisiana, and his price was representative of that. And I think there may have been another consultant he had located or tried locating as well. He put in significant efforts trying to find that. We were not given this consultant that y'all or whoever used for this other compensation study. And we did not start with a goal of setting a specific, we didn't start with the goal of getting to the result we wanted. We wanted to make sure that, to some extent, I realize if y'all proceed with this is y'all trying to, asking for a raise for yourselves. And so we wanted to make sure that we were not setting you up for failure, because that would be debated. We assumed that would be debated, questioned, weighed. We wanted to make sure that consultant's report had everything possible that anybody could stand up here, not defending personal attacks and PR slogans and, burn language and whatever, catchphrases, but actually, if you wanted to have an intelligent, educated debate about what's the proper compensation, pull out the report, pull out the data, look at the data and say, well, yeah, Hammond is in between this city and this city. Its population is in between this city and this city. Its revenue is between this city and this city, and it has a college. Seems like these two are comparable. That's why we made a point not to go grab New Orleans or Baton Rouge, not to go grab Washington, D.C. We wanted to be able, we wanted y'all, if y'all decided to proceed with that recommendation, that it was not something kind of setting yourselves up to be tarred and feathered. We wanted any one of you to be able to stand out there and defend it and say, this is what the consultant said, this is what it's based on, and anybody that's actually trying to give it an objective analysis, look at it. Some of you know, maybe all of you, I'm a lawyer in litigation. Anytime you try to offer frequently sides will get what we call hired guns to come up with a number that they, the number they want. Shockingly, the plaintiff's, accident, expert has a high number, and shockingly, the defendant's number has a low number, and you're trying to find it in there. And there's a analysis that's called a Dober analysis where you look at, is this based on good science? Is it based on junk science? And also, is it based on good data or bad data? The saying is if you put chicken stuff in, you get chicken stuff out. So that was, and that's why that data, that page, if you look at the report, that page is prominently displayed in the report. It's not because we were proud of it. We wanted it to be there and available. We didn't want anybody to wonder. We put it there. We chose it based on the fact that it should be able to be defended by anybody looking at it through logical, at least that was our opinion, or we were willing to defend it based on that. And there were discussions. We had public meetings about that. We discussed, the consultant came and discussed it with us. It was not something that went away. We turned over to them and never heard from them until it showed up. The consultant presented things to us about what was going on. He explained how those places were chosen. He explained, why they were selected, the data that was there, and the point, he even, I think, was the one that brought the point of, you have a city here that has a census population of one number, but you really swing higher than that because you've got a college and they're transient, but they're here. Like, they may not get counted on the census, but they do exist. They do use resources. They do generate revenue. Nothing's perfect. It was, one of the things that kind of distinguished this from some analysis is, for instance, if you're doing hospitals do these things all the time for doctors and stuff like that. If you're trying to hire a doctor, you are literally pulling from a national market. That's the kind of job somebody will come to go to your doctor, ask them where they went to college, ask them where they were born. They pull nationally because those are the kind of jobs that people move for the job, anywhere for the right job. And so that compensation, North Oaks is competing with Houston. North Oaks is competing with Jackson, is competing with wherever. I have friends that I went to high school with that are doctors now that are all over the country, and so you would look, if you're talking about a doctor's position, you would look nationally. You got to know what that market is, at least regionally. If you're talking about a position, that's let's say, I don't know, $10, $15, $20 an hour, you're not moving across the country for that. You're looking at what's around you. If I can get a job that is, less work, better pay across the street, I'm going over there. I'm not packing up my family and moving, across the country for that. So you've got to look at, and that's why maybe one size fits all is not. I mean, if you're talking about in terms of the city, I don't know that every position, that the whole city is a one-size-fits-all calculation. Because if you're talking about the, like the historic district chair y'all have had, that the city's had, I think the last few of those have been hired from New Orleans and other places because to get a pool of qualified people, you've got to go at least to New Orleans, Pennsylvania. So that's but that position is different than, some of other positions that are not as specialized, do not have the technical, requirement that you could find people locally or closer, and that people are looking at other jobs. Let's say a clerk position. You could clerk for the city, you could clerk for the parish, you can clerk at a bank, you can clerk at a law office. There's that's what they're not leaving to go to Jackson over that. They're leaving to go across the street, usually. So
actually, this is a question. So the same sheet, and I'm quite sure you saw the sheet before. How many changes have you all made on the committee on this here sheet?
There was none were made that I recall once any numbers or data were inputted. I believe the consultant produced a list of cities that he had identified, and I think he came to the meeting and proposed them to us, and I think we asked him to maybe add a few more, or he asked if we wanted some in it or some out of it. But it was there was one meeting, and to my recollection, it was made before we had numbers. Like in terms of it was made based like before he told us what the result would be. It was done as part of the. I'm trying to figure out whether or not to include. I think one of those doesn't have a college.
Yeah, the city of Slidell. That's the only one that don't have the city of Gonzales.
Yeah, so there might have been questions of, okay, these cities don't have colleges. Do we include them or not? there might be one on there that has some kind of revenue that's kind of out of whack with the population if you compare it to the rest of them. And so there was a question, you know, is something missing here? Is that reliable data? Because that data, the consultant got that data from the cities through public records requests, is my understanding of it. And so we were relying on what the consultant was relying on what the municipalities produced to him through public records requests, is my understanding of it. So if there was one that had a population of 5,000 and it had a drastically different revenue than the rest of them, maybe there was at least a discussion had at that meeting, but that was done publicly.
Okay.
It was at a public meeting. It's somewhere in a public record. The discussion that was had about the selecting that criteria.
Okay, by you being, I'm gonna say the president of the committee, did you receive this or did all y'all receive this at the same time?
It was emailed directly to me from the consultant, and I forwarded it. I mean, there's an email chain. I mean, it was forwarded on upon receipt.
Yeah.
But I did get it first.
Okay, because you know, and I'm quite sure you done heard, I have a trust issue. I really do, and I can't hide it. And that's what I wanted to know, because I'm looking at the one you all have, and the other one that I have, the cities, the states, the comparison. I don't understand why we didn't stick with that 21,000 or 22,000 population when we did this here. So I'm gonna say it, and I told you before, I want to thank y'all for what y'all did, and I think there's something that's required every 10 years, right? Am I right, Lacey?
Regularly, or what is the frequency?
Are you asking about the salary?
No,
Separate.
the charter review.
The charter review is just whenever it feels needed. There's not a stipulation
have no
in there
time.
about time.
Okay, well, I met some people that was on the other charter review. Mr. Dove, I heard you say you've been here a long time, and myself, I appreciate everything your family been doing for Hammond. And we all have different opinions on how things go, and that's with everything. So from the other charter review to what all you all did, Frank, I thank all of y'all for your time. And that's been the biggest issue that we've been having with the city, appointing people on these boards and having time to do it and don't get paid for it. I mean, that need to be thrown out there. So the people that be on these boards, don't nobody get paid for these boards, being on these boards, but the homework, everything y'all did, I appreciate you all coming out again, because the first time y'all came out, I feel y'all was cheated, and this time, now we got a chance to hear. And moving forward, one of the gentlemen, I heard him earlier say, and he's right, you know, when it comes to the city and information, and that's the truth, from the newspaper to whatever, it's not getting out in time. So shouldn't nothing take place with the city and the community not involved. So thank you once again.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody that worked with me on the committee, too. I appreciate everything.
All right. Thank the committee again. Now we'll move into the report for the pay study report.
I'd like to address that first question on why we chose those areas that we did. It's because those were the closest areas that we could pull reliable, statistically relevant data from. So we tried to go through each of the local areas around Hammond. Those were the closest areas that we could get actual relevant data from. You know, I think the last example was a mayoral salary. It's pretty easy. You know, there's not that many open mayoral positions, right? That's not something that you can go easily apply for. That's something that the size of a city would directly relate to that compensation. I believe it also was mentioned that people can zoom in from anywhere, which is true. So not only are we competing against larger metropolitan areas, you're competing nationally for jobs as well. So yes, that was the reason that we chose those areas, is because those were the only areas that we could pull accurate data from. That was very important to us, that we gave you statistically relevant data. You know, otherwise it would just be objective. I mean, subjective data, right? So that's why we use those markets.
Yes, so it can get picked up a little bit. I don't know if that mic's working.
Yeah, some people in the back said they couldn't hear it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. So I didn't receive any questions about the data itself or any of the positions, but happy to take any further questions regarding the process, how it worked.
I just looked at, I heard you say about it was easy data that you can find, right? And reliable data that you can find. So I don't know, I'm quite sure you shouldn't have this sheet here. I'm looking at something that came before you all did yours, you know, the city of Alexander, you know, the population, you know, 46,000, the revenue. I'm looking at the revenue, I'm looking at the household income, and I look at, so I just saw it. Okay, so from my notes, I'm looking at Baton Rouge, the population, 227,000 people. So
sure.
I look at that, I look at the income, $895 million.
Sure.
It was in 2020. Employees, 4,000 employees. I look at New Orleans, $687 million, 2020. 383,000 people. The police department, 1,200 people. So I'm looking at this here, and then in employees, 7,450 people. This in 2020. Mobile, $284 million.
Sure.
Population, excuse me, sir. I promise you, I'm gonna let you talk. 187,000 people, you know, employed. 2,000 people. So I'm comparing it to what you have versus, I'm gonna say what makes sense to me.
Sure.
And that's what I'm looking at. So if I'm looking at these here numbers, and I say it all the time, you know, when people ask me where I'm from Hammond, the country, and the country, what happened in the country? You know, we don't really have bad things going on in the country. I mean, it's been rough about the last 2-3 years versus anything, but it's all over the world. I mean, it's been rough all over the world. So this is what I'm comparing mine to versus what I see. So one of the questions I had, you know, could everything that you say on this sheet and a written statement from you that I would like to have that is accurate to your knowledge, you know, because the changes being made, and that's what I was afraid of. And I tell everybody, they know, you know, from the police that's come by my house, it's no secret for the people that I talk to. My concern about, I want everybody, and I mean this, I want everybody to receive a raise. That's all I want. But in the process of them receiving a raise, you know, I look at the handpick, and I have a problem with it. You know, if I sit here and don't say nothing, something be wrong with me. That's the problem that I have. You looking for some questions? I give you some questions. The building official, okay? What I see on here currently, We on the same page?
No.
You already know the numbers.
No, I don't know. We pulled thousands of numbers for this study, which is why I asked for specific questions about specific positions.
Okay, the building official, I see this here at 45,000. Then I'm looking at 100,000. Option 1, 53,000. New salary 100,000. Go over to option 2. New start 54,000. New salary 100,000. Keep going. Option 3, 54,000. New salary 100,000. And I'm gonna say this here. What you telling me on this here sheet, that this is accurate?
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Can I address your earlier question about the sizes of the cities? I can promise that folks that are leaving the workforce that are working for your city are not waiting for jobs to open up in similarly sized cities. They're not checking to see what the budgets are for those similarly sized cities. They are looking for higher compensation. That is not important to the people that are leaving the workforce and not important to the people that are applying for your jobs.
So they leaving the workforce because of they're going for higher pay, right?
Yeah.
That's what you say.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm looking, and I'm gonna say it again. Out of all the hand-picked people, somehow their salaries it don't add up with what I'm looking at. So, and I have been going through it. The first time I didn't even touch the book, and I knew the book had been altered, changed, moved around, and fixed, but I was elected by the people. And this is what I say, and I tell anybody this here. Like I said, from the police officer to everybody. I became a city councilman, and I didn't even know what my salary was. And that's the truth. I really thought I was making $800 from the last time I talked to Willie Grant Jackson. That was the last city councilman. I think that was 16 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, that they was making $800. So I didn't even know it had changed from 8 to 1,000. But from the fire department to the police department to we pick these jobs, and we pick them for a reason. And we work for the public, and it's not a job that you're supposed to get rich off of. And I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, yes, it's scary. Some of the jobs I had working in the plant, very scary. You know what I did? I decided I didn't want to do those jobs no more. They were scary, but I'm not going to sit here and have you saying that the people are leaving because of the pay, because that's what you're saying, and that's what they told you to say. But I'm saying this here. We have an issue, and the folks in Hammond know we have an issue, but just like we here now for this meeting, this is how we need to be for all the meetings. And then from the black to the white, we'll all have a good understanding on what are we looking for. I'm gonna leave it at that, sir. So you can go. You can say what you have to say.
Any other questions on that?
I have questions. I'm just not sure what format we're going in. Are you going to give us a presentation? Someone's going to explain these options, or should we just start asking you questions?
I believe that.
That's correct. What I was going to do is do a quick recap. If you guys remember, we presented to you guys, we put out an RFP, then we presented the different proposals. You guys selected RH NOLA, so then they came in and met with employees. We had a couple of different sessions where everybody had the opportunity to meet with Jacob and give feedback on job descriptions. So last week, Jacob came in and presented his findings. So if you're looking at the spreadsheet in front of you, his findings are in the green, which is option 1. So what we did was, which he gave us a lot of basically guidelines to kind of find a way to implement this. So what we wanted to provide to you guys were tools to how to implement this pay increase, because it's not an easy thing to do. Because based on his numbers, if you were look down at the last number on the last page.
Sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt because I wanted
Sure.
to clarify. The green option was their option.
Correct.
And according to
Based on-
the report that we saw last
Correct.
week, that was the bottom range, that third column? Okay,
That's where we started.
Okay.
And if you see at the bottom of it, to implement the changes throughout the city, it would be an additional $5.1 million.
Okay.
So looking at that number, it gave everybody a little bit of heartburn. So we said, okay, what else can we provide information for you guys so you can make a really good decision? What kind of tools can we provide you? So that's when we decided to start looking at, if you start with the first one, because we did hear your concerns in regards to making sure that everybody receives an increase, and we're all on the same page when it comes to that. So if you're looking at the first group as grounds worker, if you go across, for an example, the starting salary currently is $22,000. So the new starting salary, based on HR NOLA's information, was $28,000. So all we did is come across and provide you different options on how that would affect the total budget and as well as maintaining the pay grade. Go ahead. Okay. So if you go across, one of the options that we had was to increase that salary. The new salary would be $25,000, or if you go into the blue column, the other new salary would be $25,600.
Got a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. So in your green, I'm very new to this, okay? I've never worked for a company before. But we have starting salary, HR NOLA's recommendation. Up here it says starts at $11.90, right? An hour.
That would be the very first base salary for the lowest paid individual.
Okay, so I would assume that would be groundskeeper.
Correct.
Step 1?
Correct.
Okay, but $11.90 times 2,080 hours a year does not equal that amount, so I'm confused.
The lowest paid person in HR NOLA scenario is down a few. If you look at
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
sign technician, sign technician was lower, and then there's another one that's below that, though.
Okay. So I guess what I'm missing is the very first,
The lowest one on option 1 on HR NOLA is $22,036. And that's where the $11.90 an hour comes from.
but that $11.90 an hour times 2,080 hours is $24,752.
The lowest person on their original
So-
was that. I'm sorry, 22,000 is our starting, where we are. 25,290, I think, was their lowest start. If you go down, that's on billing clerk.
Perhaps
One right above that is
24.
24,750,
So that would match
and
that
that's
amount.
park ranger.
So that would be $11.90 an hour.
Those are the lowest,
That
yeah,
matches.
those are the lowest salaries in the HR NOLA. What we did was we structured this according to how the pay grid currently works. With pay grade 115, right now you have grounds worker, mechanic 1, park ranger, all in that pay grade 115. And so we started from where we start right now, currently in our system. The next column over in that green is where HR NOLA puts them. And you kind of have to look individually, because in the HR NOLA system, there are no more pay grades, which are like clusters of employees of similar skill sets or of similar responsibilities in terms of how much, the value of the equipment that they're using, or how costly a mistake might be, or how many people they're supervising. So the pay grade groups employees together, and that's what's actually up on this other chart that you have, is our current pay grade system. And this describes, it has several positions grouped together so that you end up with, instead of 110 or 115 different pays for individual positions, you end up with groups of them. and it's a little bit easier system to maintain going forward. It is the system that we have used for, I think, 2 decades at this point, in terms of pay grades.
In this one?
In this one, it's a,
This one. Looks like a red.
it was on the front of your colorful sheet, yeah. And so this one groups them together and kind of shows you where the old pay grade was, where the old starting salary was, and where the new option 2 and 3, if we go with pay grades again. You have the option to go with option 1, which is HR NOLA's baseline. We use those same metrics to group the positions together. So some may be slightly higher or slightly lower than what HR NOLA said, but then they go back into the pay grade system that we've been using. And so option 2, again, hits at kind of that $3 million overall cost. Option 3 hits closer to the $4 million. It's $3.9 to $4 million overall cost. So that's why you have 3 options in front of you. And we're willing to go, we're willing to explore other options if the council wants to explore other options. But I think this is an important time to talk about the value of public service. And I kind of fundamentally disagree with sometimes the way that public service is characterized, because I think it's important to realize this is actually Public Service Recognition Week. So thank you all for being public service minded. And yeah, some of the jobs are really hard. Some of the jobs are really tough, and they're completely dangerous, and they're completely things that most average people don't want to do on a regular basis. And I think it is not a place where you get super rich from doing it, but it is a place where we should recognize the value of that work. And I think what we have seen time and time again, on your other sheet that we provided to you, you have 18 different comparisons with other cities and parishes that are all right here, that are all similarly sized, that many were listed as those. So you have the individual positions. You can go look at the starting pay for all of those. If you want an individualized report showing you each one of those compared to ours, I'll be happy to do that for you. Because whatever it takes to get the pay raised in the city of Hammond, that's what we're going to do. Okay.
So the most basic question I have here, and I've heard it from other people, is how, with these 3 options, option 1, $11.90 an hour starting. Option 2, $12.10 an hour. Option 3, $12.35 an hour. It goes down in total cost. How is that possible? How can you pay more per hour, but then not be giving more money out? So can you dumb it down for me, because I don't understand that.
Sure. So in the HR NOLA version, $11.90 is the lowest paid position. Again, we looked really closely, quickly. There's only 2 people that come in on that lower range. You'll give me just a second. Let me pull up another chart that I have that kind of groups our pay grade comparisons. In our original system, we had 3 people in pay grade 115. In this new system, we come out again with 3 people, but they're slightly different people. So there was a pretty big jump between some of the ones that HR NOLA had valued a little bit lower versus what we were suggesting. And if you start grouping those together and trying to average the number and come up with a new start, that's why option 2 starts at $12.10 an hour. But then you have some people, again, who get just a little bit lower than what HR NOLA said, and we were trying to make that work as an option within the budget. The third option does the same thing. It groups people together, and so some people are going to be lower. In the options, for example, a good example, in option 1, your police officer starts at $45,720, according to HR NOLA. In option 2, the police officer starts at $40,000, so it's lower than what HR NOLA had suggested. In option 3, the police officer starts at $42,500, so that's where it gets back up to that $4 million total range.
How did you derive at the So how did you derive at the option 2 and option 3? Was there a formula or something that you used from HR NOLA that broke out the next two columns?
We took HR NOLA's numbers and then we started averaging them together if we put them back into the pay grades where those positions were similarly located. And some positions, if HR NOLA had them coming in a lot higher, then they got bumped up a pay grade. If HR NOLA had them coming in lower, they got bumped down a pay grade. We kept the same differential per pay grade, which is around $1,500 between each pay grade level that we currently have and that we have used for at least the last, I think, 7 years, 8 years, that same differential. So we used that same grid and then kind of started trying to figure out where positions would fit according to where HR NOLA was valuing them and how where they would most closest fit in the grid.
So HR NOLA has no grid.
That's correct.
And now these other two options maintain a grid, but it tightens up the grid, okay? Now I remember when we first started looking at all this, it was, we can't do this because of the grid. We can't do this because of the grid. Why should we go back to a grid if we have the opportunity to not?
If you want to not do the grid, that's fine. I think some of the employees like the grid because they can kind of know step to step and see it more visually. We could potentially give every employee the 30-year plan and say, you know, your starting salary at your position right now starts here. And so with a 2% raise each year, you would see this going forward. I don't know what employees prefer in terms of that.
Can we get from HR NOLA any input you have on our grid system, whether it's a good thing, it's a bad thing, whether other municipalities follow the grid?
Sure. I mean, the grid system, like Lacey said, does give employees the option to see how they're going to progress. It does somewhat limit hiring managers into what they can offer employees coming in, which is why we suggested those incentives for extra experience, certifications, education, things like that. But if it is something that the employees enjoy doing, you know, most municipal systems are like this.
With a grid?
Yes. Yeah. And while it does, I think, limit some of your decision-making ability, it is an easy way for employees to understand it.
The grid basically rewards employees longevity.
For tenure, yes.
So for example, with the police department, you have an incoming police officer at a certain amount. The grid isn't a step up until they make sergeant?
Sergeant.
Okay, so for that example, it doesn't matter how long you've been sticking around. That's literally, as people leave and you bump up the grid. But yet for a grounds worker, they're waiting for a certain number of years because their grid is different, and then they're getting higher when they get up a certain number of years. Is that how this works?
So the grid is always based on always based on how long you're there and how far you move up your steps. Both the police and the fire grid are based on percentage differentials that are required by state law. Technically, on the fire side, the percentage is actually written into state law according to how the positions are promoted up the chain. So when you move from firefighter to firefighter first class and then to operator and up to captain, those percentages of how much more pay you receive are all defined in state law. And we create that in the grid to make sure that we adhere to those and so that it's crystal clear that we're following the civil service process and that we're following state law in implementing those promotions and raises. On the police side, there are minimum salaries discussed in state law, authorized in state law. The minimum salaries were set like in the 70s, I think. Is that, anybody know offhand? Probably the 60s. They followed the same pattern that the firefighters did in terms of creating that differential, that pay differential, and kind of codifying, here's how much you are guaranteed when you're promoted from police officer to sergeant and from sergeant to lieutenant. The police, though, decided to do it with dollars, and so we have tried to create systems that mirror one another and that say, okay, it's a similar, again, percentage that's based on those grids. And we keep those, I would say that I think the vast majority of people here on the civil service side definitely want to keep the grid because it helps us ensure that we're following state law.
In order to do a grid on HR NOLA's numbers, we'd have to have a lot of buckets.
Almost, well, pretty much, there may have been one or a few positions that came in at the same starting salary, but overall, you're probably going to have 100 to 110 different pay grades, essentially, for each of the unique positions that you have.
Okay.
For an example, okay, a beginning firefighter. Hammond got him at $10.59. Page 5 to 7. It's on page 5. Hammond got him. Am I right? Hammond got him at $10.59 an hour. Correct.
You're looking at the starting pay for a firefighter?
Yes, in Hammond.
In terms of what we currently pay, the $26,413?
Yes, I was just doing about an hour. I didn't want to call out the actual number. Okay, 26,000. Okay, NOLA got him at 34, which is a $8,000 different. Keep going. Option 2 at 30,000, which is a $3,000, well, almost a $4,000 raise per year. Then the next option, option 3, at 32,000 with a $6,000 raise. And I'm looking at the percentage. The first percentage is what, 31%. Option 2 is 15%. And option 3 is 23%. I'm looking at the percentage. We could sit here and go with any one of them, but I think it's a lot that we're doing as far as money-wise, what the city gonna do next year, what the city gonna be able to do, because what I'm afraid of, taxes going up. I'm afraid of that. They're gonna come up pretty soon. We talk about the taxes have to go up. But I'm looking at that for as a firefighter, you know, a beginning fireman. The percentage is too high for me.
Is this typical to see this high percentages on raises when you do on different municipalities? Is this pretty common, or do they kind of cap it out at a percentage, like for the first so many years, or what?
I think it depends on when the last time you raised salaries was, and I think it's been quite a while for the city of Hammond.
Because it ranges from 1% to 55, 54% a raise increase.
Sure. We benchmarked the jobs based on the data available. So if the data was 50% more, that's what we have as our result.
Can we go to the department heads with the car allowances taken away? So this is for across the board, proposing take away car allowances and just having it as a salary?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. So you've added in that amount to their salary?
Yes.
For this purpose?
We actually went off again, and you'll see that. What HR NOLA gave us are salary numbers, and so that's what is carried across.
What about the
So the
cell
car
phone
allowance
too?
goes away. The cell phone allowance stays because the cell allowance is used by every department head nonstop. I think most of you have the cell phones of all the department heads, or at least most of them. Again, that was something that we had heard from the council in last year, and so we wanted to make sure that we looked at that and made that an equitable item. So all the car allowances are gone with this implementation.
Anyone from the public have a question?
Tasha Dameron, 410 West Robert. I wanted to, something you had said about public service versus employees. I run a business, and I can tell you that it's not just about what your starting salary is, it's retaining people and keeping people from going other places. When you have a constant turnover for people trying to get better wages, you waste money. You waste money because it takes you time, effort, and resources to train someone. So you're starting from ground zero. Just like this grounds worker for $22,000, it's like $10.59 an hour. You can't pay anyone $10.59 an hour to cut your grass. That's not going to happen. You have to be competitive, and you have to have a living wage. But also, you know, when you're a public servant, I think the idea of a public servant versus an employee is different. An employee is someone who goes to work each and every day. They may serve the public, but they are doing a job. The billing clerks, the grounds people, the firefighters are risking their lives, and their pay should, and the police, that's a very dangerous job. That's not filing papers where I get a paper cut. That's going into someone's house to save their life, to save their property. So it should be representative to that. So it's not just what they're doing around the state in different places, it's also our neighboring parishes. We're losing more people that are going to St. Tammany or Livingston. That's who you're competing with. Most people aren't going to move across the country. They're going to move across parish lines. They're going to move within 30 minutes to an hour. And another thing was the 2-mile radius. What if someone lives in Husser and they're an employee of the city? How are you going to do that? Are you going to say you're a department head now, you can't be a department head later, because now we have this 2-mile radius from any point? You know, so I think that there has to be some kind of medium in there, and that you have to look at the whole picture. And I mean, people at Chick-fil-A make $14 and $15 an hour, and that's a part-time job. You have people that, again, like I said, they are professionals. They're working 40 hours a week. Now, the 2% every single year, that should be on performance. You know, how did you do at your job? You earn a raise. You don't automatically get a raise. And that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Hi, Jessica Shirey, 202 Holly Drive. I'm not going to say everything that she just said, but I do reiterate that. But I also like to think about this from an economic standpoint. And whenever the people that live and work in our community obviously make more money, they're going to spend more money within our city, which is going to bring in more sales taxes, more businesses, services, and those sorts of things. You know, being able to afford to buy a house, being qualified to be able to buy a home, those sorts of things. I think that that is an investment in our community and keeping people here. And, you know, I like to live by a saying that when the tide rises, so do all the ships. And so whenever everybody's doing good, then everybody's doing good in many different avenues. So I think that a lot of people they've already most have dedicated their time, but it comes to a point where you just can't anymore. So I'm in favor of raises. To what extent is a different story. You know, I understand that, but our people need our money. They need the money in order to stay here and keep our money here. So that's it.
Carolyn Harrell, 2208 Shuri Drive, Hammond, Louisiana. So I want to address the cities that were not selected and the thought process that I'm hearing from the chairman of our charter committee, as to Thibodeau and Ruston, simply because they have similarities like, oh, they have a college. Let's go with Thibodeau. Nicholls State University 2022 enrollment was 4.6 thousand. Southeastern's 14.6 thousand. That's why you don't use Thibodeau. Ruston, yes, they have a university. Their enrollment for 2022 is 11,000. Again, Southeastern, 14.6. They're not comparable. However, they're also not your competition. So I'm standing here as the spouse of someone who drives 45 minutes south of here to make more than I do as an associate professor. We do very well because of him, and he's a corporal, making more than a captain and a lieutenant at Hammond Police Department. There's no reason, I'll just be honest with you, there's no reason that every one of them shouldn't get up, walk out, and go to any drivable department near here, because they all pay more, with the exception of the few in this parish that, for whatever reason, don't have the budget. But we're Hammond, and we're better than that. And so the quality of your department depends upon the talent of your workforce, and the talented individuals are leaving for the departments like the one my spouse works for, because they're paying them the regional average, and that's what he's trying to explain to you. The regional average in this region is what he's presented to you. If you don't like it, I don't know what to say about that, because the data is there. You can drive to these. I have officers from all of these departments that are competing with you that are willing to give me their W-2s to end this. And so that is why you can't use Thibodeau and Ruston, just because they have a college. Okay, thank you.
Ivan CNO 2009 Carbon Road. I just had one question. What is the highest paid person on the city of Hammond?
It would be building, yeah. The building official, yes.
Currently, it's the building
The
official,
building official would be the highest paid person. Currently, yes.
which is the salary that the council set last year.
That's a recent salary. It wasn't a step up.
And that was actually the salary, if you'll remember, that was done off of SSA Consultants when they did the 6 quick comparisons that we were needing, because we were trying to hire in exactly those positions. And so that was the same consultants that you just looked at for the mayor and the council people, same report that came from them, and that's where that number came from, and the numbers that the council decided on last year.
But it started at 45,000. That's what it started at. Building official.
Building official.
And then NOLA suggests 53,000
As a start.
as a start. So as I keep going on, option 2, it started out at 54,000. Option 3, it started out at 54,000. So that being said, that's what scares me with the whole thing when we hand-picking people. You know, when we hand-picking people, it's amazing how the salary is so high, and that's what scares me, you know, that the salary is so high. I know everything took place.
I was just going to point out that that position is not receiving any raise in any of the options, because that position was set by the council last year. That was a very competitive salary. It was a very unique position because it was kind of a blending of several positions as well. So just to make that clear, if you look across the line, that's why
Yeah,
there's.
but on paper, once again, storage at 45,000. NOLA suggests 53,000. Option 2, 54,000. Option 3, 54,000.
Right. Again, just to remind everybody, options 2 and 3 are based on grouping positions in pay grades. So there are other positions that are valued in that same pay grade 135 in option 2 and 3 that would be starting with similar salary.
I have a question, 'cause I think it will help illustrate this potentially. So if this was a new pay grid, so under option 2, 54,350 is the start. And on this other sheet you've given, the max there would be 98, and then under option 3, 99. So we're we're over what the max should be. But the point of my question is, say you have someone coming in outside who didn't have years of service, and we have this grid. Say we introduce one of these, and we come in, they don't have the years, but we're going to put them into this grid. How do we decide how we're going to pay them? The years don't matter, but we say we're going to start you at step, I don't know, 20?
No. Most of the people, when they come here, they start in step 0, 1, 2. They start on the low end.
No, but I'm talking about the building official. If you want us to be competitive, that's our new pay grid. That's our range. We got a new guy coming in.
Sure.
We can start him at 54,350 if he's at step 0. Well, we'll never hire someone for that because we're trying to get someone in. We just learned how hard it is to hire one of those people. So if we do this grid and I want to get someone in who has some experience and make it competitive, can we just electively say we're going to pay you 90 and put you at this step?
That's basically what you did last year when you agreed on a salary.
That's something you have to do.
Yeah,
Because you're not going to get someone.
Right.
But if there's someone that has the classification and they're just starting out,
We can put their step in, is what I'm asking. Yes. I know for police you can't because, in fire you can't because it's based on years. But any of these new hire positions that there's someone who has no experience with the city of Hammond, say for our city planner, we're hiring you at this step so that we can get you to this salary, right?
So in HR Nola's report, he also has for each department, he had a list of both experience percentages and if there's other qualifications such as a degree or other certifications that are directly related to that.
But he's using percentages. We're using steps if we did the grid?
You could use the same philosophy because the steps are still going to be aligned to a certain amount of percent.
Okay.
So each step is 2% basically on the main city side of the grid.
So you use your good judgment when you're evaluating the applicant. And the tough thing about civil service is state law. If you have a good applicant coming from another area that may be assistant chief, he's starting at ground zero in our system. So he may have 10 years. He may be making $60,000, $80,000. And he comes here and he goes straight down to step 1. But that's civil service.
Anyone else?
Lieutenant Jennifer Payne, 120 South Oak Street in Hammond. The first thing that I want to bring to your attention is these cities that were named in the study. They actually come from the Office of the State Examiner. It's on their webpage, OSE. Alexandria. Now this is cities that are also classified as a large municipality. When they look at us and they look at these cities, they expect the same thing. Believe it or not, this has nothing to do with me. This is the state that put these. Alexandria, Baton Rouge, Bossier City, Broussard, Hammond, Houma, Kenner, Lafayette, Lake Charles, Monroe, Natchitoches, New Iberia, Opelousas, Pineville, Ruston, Shreveport, Sulphur, West Monroe, Youngsville, and Zachary. I don't know how they come up with this formula, but that is the other large municipalities in the state. We are competitive with NOPD because there are people that live here that work for NOPD. We are competitive with Baton Rouge because we've had, look, I know my voice is shaking, but this affects me. I live here, I work here. My husband lives here, he works for the police department. This is my son. This is 100% of our income. And yes, we knew what we were making whenever we took these jobs. I know you've mentioned that before and said, look, y'all knew what y'all were going to make to start with. I was also 21 years old when I took this job, and I've kept this job because I love it. But we are all getting to the point, and you can only get to this point for so long before you say, you know what, it's just not worth it anymore. And I think I've finally turned the corner from being an angry police officer to being an angry citizen, because I'm going to have to sell my house and move because there will be no police here. There will be nobody to put out the fire at your house. Hammond will not have
anyone. It's ridiculous that we're even having this conversation. There are more than a handful of police officers. I'll tell you right now, if we get zero raise at all whatsoever, write it down. Everybody says if so-and-so's elected, I'm going to Canada. I'm leaving. I will not be employed by the city of Hammond because we know our worth now. Because we paid $60,000 for someone to sit and make this graph because you did it all. Look, good job. Because he went to school to better himself. I know you've mentioned that too. Why didn't people go to school to better themselves if you want to make more money? Because you do need some of your people to be police officers. There are people that do math. There are people that study law. I'm not one. I'm a police officer. I don't think any of us come out here every day and say, you know, I'm just out here because I'm rough and tough and that's what I do. No, we're here because we love our jobs and because we feel a certain amount that we need to give back to the citizenry, because I've even said, people, why don't y'all picket? Why don't y'all go on strike? We wouldn't do that because that's not right. That's not right for the citizens. And you know in your heart when you do something like that, that that's not the right thing to do. So we just would never do that. But it has come to the point where, you know, you can only get beat down for so long to where you're just like, screw it, it's not, the rewards do not justify what you have to put in to get that. Especially when I've been here 22 years in July. I know I'm running past my 3 minutes. 22 years in July, there's a police officer that left this year to a new department and is already making more money than I am right now. 22 years. Why would I stay here? And trust me, I'm not the only person that feels that way. I know a lot of people can say that. If y'all want names, I'll ask them if they're okay with releasing that information. But I promise you I will not be the only one that leaves, and you're going to lose good police officers. Years from now, you're going to want 30-year veterans. You can't have 30-year veterans in 30 years if you can't attract employees today. If you want a good city in 10 years for your kids, for your grandkids, 30 years from now, guess what? That's these young guys. That's these guys that are coming up. It's an investment in our future. And you're basically just saying, yes, we would like more crime, please. If you vote against this raise, I can't wrap my brain around it. Y'all might be smarter than I am. I don't know. I'm very passionate about it. Like you can tell in my voice, it makes me angry. It makes me happy. It makes me sad all at one time. But Hammond is better than this. We can do better than this. And this isn't just the police department. This is every one of these guys. Nobody that works for the city of Hammond should make $10.50 an hour. That's ridiculous. I know, we see what these guys do, and we do appreciate across departments and, you know, across job titles. We do appreciate them because guess what? You know, oh, they work for a garbage company. Okay, let your garbage not get picked up for 2 weeks and see how important that person is. You have to have every person on these sheets to do their job, or this city is going to fall out of alignment, and I'm not going to be here to see what happens next. I can't do that to myself or my family, and I think a lot of us feel that way. Thank you.
George Bergeron, 303 East Thomas Street, and for those in the audience wondering, no, I'm not related to the chief, just an inside joke, so you know. I have been here for 22 years, and I've been dealing with pay studies since 2005. This is the first pay study that I know of where the employees actually get a decent increase. There's more focus with the employees in mind and not with the city saving a dollar. You know, according to the ordinance, the city shall do a pay study at least every 2 years. Whether you like it or not, and President Andrews, you've always said we'd like to be good stewards of the city's, you know, finances and the taxpayers' dollars. Well, y'all spent $62,000 on a report that, you know, you may possibly consider not to even use. So in essence, that would, you know, be tossing $62,000 to the side of a report that was generated by a reputable company. Just my rank alone of lieutenant is down 92%. Our rank is the lowest, paid amongst everybody surveyed. So just think of that for a second, 92% below what everybody else makes. So that's the only comment I want to make. Any sense in beating a dead horse, but, bring some of those thoughts to mind. Thank you.
John Exnicius, 111 North Magnolia. I would just like to say, as a citizen and a taxpayer, I'm highly embarrassed how this outsourced company that got paid money to do a job and give you data was addressed tonight and questioned on their integrity of their numbers that they gave you. It's very embarrassing for me as a citizen and taxpayer to sit there and see that happen. I'm just going to let you know, I very much appreciate our police force. This decision cannot be based on emotion. It needs to be based on data. And it's unfortunate, and I'm very sorry that y'all had to go through that, but thank you for what you're providing. Not making a decision is a decision. Things are going to happen regardless of whether you make it or not. It's time to take action and stop with all this foolishness. So, thank you.
I don't think that actually nobody actually just sitting up here does not want to see anybody get a raise. This is something that's very serious. You're correct. We paid for this survey. The numbers is here. We need to look at some things to make the proper decision to make sure that we get out what needs to be done. We appropriated funds last year in our budget for the police department to get a raise. We appropriated some more funds inside of that budget to go across the board for the other city employees to get a raise as well. So nobody here is against saying not to give anybody a raise. I think we're all on the same page with that. Again, I know that there are some that put their lives on the line different than others in this city. But to be honest with you, for the last couple of days, I've been receiving phone calls across the board from city employees expressing their feelings about being compensated for the jobs they do. And I promise you this, anybody in here right now, whatever job that you're doing, you're still not going to feel that you're compensated what you feel that you need to be compensated. Again, I know we've heard these comments or things that have been thrown out about a person knew what they were signing up for when they got the job. True enough, they knew what they were signing up for when they got the job. Yes, like she said, that was 21 years ago. But times have changed. Things have changed. And when we're looking at the time that we're living in right now, your check could be burned up in gas. And I trust me, I understand exactly where you're coming from. It's time for us to stop pointing the finger, playing games back and forth with each other, and we need to come to an agreement on what needs to be done to get our employees to where they need to be.
Okay, one more thing. And I love that you said, okay, Carolyn Harrell, 2208 Shuri Drive. I want to thank you for your honesty, but there is a number at which they would say, I do feel like I'm adequately compensated. I look at the lives of my children, the school that they go to, the activities that they're in, our home. I look at everything we have, and so does my husband, and we say, this is fair compensation. This is more than fair compensation. That is why these departments retain their officers. No one's leaving these departments because you're 92% below, correct? If we put you at the regional average, would you say, this is fair compensation? Okay, so there is a number at which these men and women will say, I'm being fairly compensated. So I know it sounds, it's cliche to say there's no number at which you're going to feel fairly compensated. I'm here to tell you there is. We have that number in our household. We're so happy with it. I don't get to pay my children's tuition for the school that they go to without the number that he has earned, in his however many years with this agency. So please understand the number is important. Just saying they're going to get a raise, if the raise isn't enough, they're leaving, as they should. And I support them doing that. And I think half of this audience supports them, whether we're talking about fire, police, because you can drive 20 minutes down the road and find a number that makes you really happy.
And
Makes sense.
and I understand it. And I don't want you to take what I said the wrong way. I'm not just saying throw something at them in this.
No, I
that.
know. And you've been very open and honest with
And I'm
the
talking
process.
about from the heart, doing what's right.
Yes.
That's what I mean.
Yes, thank you.
You know, and to be honest with you, I've been around the Hammond Police Department all of my life. My grandfather worked for the police department. My uncle worked for the police department. I can go back to Chief Adams. That's how far I can go back. I remember. I understand totally. I worked for the sheriff department, and I understand
Right,
people that put their lives on the line.
right.
That's why last year, Councilwoman Gonzalez put the motion out there, and we approved it for the $600,000 to start the ball to rolling.
Yes.
I totally understand it, and what I'm saying, I honestly believe out of the 5 people that's sitting up here, we want to see a raise done.
But the appropriate raise, the number,
and
that
I-
means
I-
you're being fairly compensated.
And I agree with you
Thank
100%.
you. Okay, good. Thank you so much.
As to the 600, I'm really not the kind of person to say I told you so, but when we set that aside, I said, let's use this amount as the bare minimum that it needs to be, and it would make all of these numbers in these 3 categories just a little bit easier to chew. And there'd be, I don't know how many officers that might still be here. So we need to do this, and my only hang-up and question for this is, do employees want a grid or not a grid? Because that, we got to decide option 1, the high dollar one, which everybody gets a whole lot of money, and it's expensive and okay, but employees may want the grid, and that needs to be taken into consideration. Maybe if they want the grid, option 2 or 3 are the right idea, but maybe that's not the right dollar amount. We might need to reevaluate. I have no experience with a grid, so I have no opinion of it. I want to know what people want. Do you want a grid?
Correct me if I'm wrong, the fire department and the
They have to.
police have to have the grid, right? Correct?
We worked really hard on it. You can hear.
No, I'm not saying that it's wrong or right. I just want to make sure that they have, it's required, right?
Yeah, we can. Anthony Marr, 1290 Southwest Road Avenue.
Frank Patty, 49435 GF Tyson Road.
So right now, this is the representation of the union. We work diligently. I think you 5 actually corrected our grid within your first few months. First of all, I just want to say thank you all for bringing this conversation, administration, bringing this conversation for a pay raise. The impact on this pay raise, at least I'm going to speak for the fire department's perspective, is huge. And I can't remember that there's ever been a time that where this conversation's to the forefront like this. So thank you guys, thank all y'all. But the grid specifically, we are in full support of that grid system, because what it does, it accounts for that state law with differential in the promotional raises, and then it adds by the state law to 2%, so it maintains that longevity. So we do support that. We would ask, I think, with the fire department that maintains as is. That's what we're asking. I think it's a fair. We've polled all of our employees, or at least the ones that we represent, which is about 99% or 100% representation. So we do, fire department, we do ask to maintain that pay grid.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you.
These 2 options, they have that grid, that same one that we passed.
Yes.
Okay.
It just starts on different levels.
Right.
And so a third, if you want a 4th option to throw in here, and you like that number where HR NOLA ends, we could always raise the grid another step. We could always raise it to where HR NOLA starts it. That's all. Those are all viable options.
And I think probably across the city, my opinion, I think we have the cleanest pay plan or pay grid. That's just my opinion, speaking from my perspective.
You mean fire or the whole city?
Fire.
The fire department is the most easy to understand grid.
It's very easy to understand. An employee could come in, they all come in, most of them, if they go to the line as a firefighter, as they promote or at year 20, they can see what what their salaries would be. To me, that's huge, and I think that's they can compare, to other agencies, but in my opinion, as far as representing the labor, I think that's, we're in favor of maintaining that pay grade. Well, look, I'm just being honest with you. I know what we worked on, and we like what we have right now. Just applying a percentage, and it goes throughout the system. That's what we are asking for.
Let's say this here. When you all came before us about a raise, how much work did y'all had to go through as far as getting a raise?
Are you talking about when y'all first took office?
Yes, sir.
We probably worked on that for about a year.
Yes. And so we was new councilmen, right? When you all became before us. I'm talking about y'all started on that. We wasn't even city councilmen at the time.
No, sir. I just want to clarify that what we did then was there was a lot of discrepancies in our pay plan. So what that did was plug numbers in. Everybody didn't get a pay raise back then. There was certain employees and certain classes that didn't get pay raises. Some got some, but all it did was it cleaned up and clearly defined that pay grid.
And so what you just said, so when you came before us, because I just heard you say you representing at least 99% of the firemen, right?
Probably
It'll be 100 Wednesday.
Okay, 100 Wednesday. Okay, well, I like the 100. And now you just said some of them didn't get a raise.
Back then, 4 years ago, no, sir, they didn't.
Okay, and I said this here, and I thank you for that. I respect people that tell the truth. You told the truth. Some of y'all got raises, some of y'all didn't. That's why I fight this, because you know what? I want everybody to get a raise. I said this from day one. The mayor and I was in HR, and I told the mayor this when I first got in office. Mr. Mayor, I want, and I call them the little people, I want the little people to get a raise. We talked about it from day one. When I got in, I went to HR, and I said, why these people not getting a raise? That was my biggest concern. Being a city councilman, that's what they came to me for. In my community, the ones working in Hammond, they talked to me. Man, what we need to do to get a raise? They talked about the grade. I hear we saying that a lot. The grade is something when it comes to not a fireman, not a policeman. The grade changes when it comes to other people. These are things that I've been hearing. And so that's my biggest concern is, everybody, your department, the police department, what we got here, the grounds worker, the park ranger, the mechanic, that's all I wanted from day one for everybody to get a raise. Here we going into the 4th year now, and here we still talking about raises. So I agree with you, and I thank you for telling the truth about y'all got a raise, but everybody in your department didn't get a raise. So everybody, from that man when he first started one day, everybody should get a raise. The police department, Mr. Angelo, I talked to him, been knowing him all my life. He saw me come from a little boy to a man now. And he'll talk to me and I tell him. And he know I'm support for the police to getting a raise. I have no problem with it. An officer come by my house yesterday. I've been knowing him a long time. I'm all for everybody. And that's what I said. I think me and Ms. Gonzalez, a lot of time we get into it, and it be about one department. But I'm about all the departments, So if you give, and Councilman Andrew, he'll tell you, when you gave one department some money, put them in all the departments. That's all I said from day one. And here it is going into the 4th year, and here we still playing as the administration and the councilman going back and forth about a raise. So everybody deserves a raise.
Councilman, I think Ms. Lacy, if I'm wrong, the reason some did not get a raise is because their steps were out of line with their years. And that's why we got that fixed to put everybody, some people might have been in year 12, but in step 15. So they were getting overpaid that percentage. So when we fixed our grid, it put them where they were supposed to be, which is why they didn't get a raise, because they were already overpaid, because I think when we did the MAG, it all messed it up.
But you can't say the word overpaid
But
now.
you're all under-
'Cause
Well,
ain't
not
nobody
over-
getting
not
overpaid.
overpaid.
Don't
It didn't
say
match up
overpaid.
with
No.
their
Match up with the
grade.
But you're all underpaid now,
Yeah,
according to
right.
this.
Yeah, so say
But yeah,
overpaid.
It was not
Overpaid for their
equitable
years.
according to when people had been hired. The people who had been hired at the same time were not making similar pay, being in the same grade.
No, but I thank you guys. I appreciate everything y'all do for the city. I thank you.
I just want to say one thing, the impact for the employees, this can be huge, and I want, all you all to know, what you have, the possibility that you have here to make the difference on the employees. So all these employees, at least the fire department, we love the city. We don't want to go nowhere. We want to stay here. That's where all of our roots are, and do the service for the city. So.
Thank you, man.
I'm just going to reiterate on one last thing. George Bergeron again, not the chief's brother. Councilman Wells, I'm sorry. Just so you know, the options presented by H.R. NOLA, at least for the police department, everybody gets a piece of the pie. It doesn't exclude anybody. I can't answer for any of the other city stuff because I'm not, privy to that information or the other employees, only to the police. But everybody gets something out of the pay study. So,
From the NOLA.
yes.
Yeah. And thank you, Mr. George. And they could tell you, well, you can tell them how far we go back and how long we've been talking about the raises. And
We go back for
yeah,
quite some time.
yeah. And I told you, and I'm just going to say it, when you came to me, when we talked about the raises, and what did I say? I said I want the jailers, the clerks. It was 3 people that the chief had left out on the raise.
Communication.
Communication.
That's taken care of in this report.
Yeah.
Everybody is in.
And that's all I said from day one. I have no problem getting the police department a raise, but
I'm going to kind of put you on the spot. Would you care to put that to a vote tonight?
oh no, we ain't gonna vote tonight. Yeah, we ain't gonna vote tonight. For one thing, my wife told me act nice up here, so.
You got to live with her.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Angelo Monaster, 303 East Thomas Street. I've been through all of these pay studies. I've seen all these different grids, but which the important thing is all of the members of the Hammond Police Department in the last few years that we've lost. We've lost 35 employees. We had a meeting this morning. We have 8 open spots. We currently have 6 new candidates that are fixing to graduate from the academy this week. My point is, when these officers come to work and they enter that squad room, I think their focus is where can we put in an application to make some money, as opposed to what are we going to do today to solve crime. And that's really kind of sad, but I think it's the truth. And I think that if we continue to pay a minimum starting salary, we're going to always have this problem. Why don't we take the lead? Why don't we have people look at Hammond and say, man, that's where I need to go to work. They pay us well, real well. We have the tax revenue. We all know how much ahead of this budget year already, and we probably have 3 months of this budget year that we haven't accounted for. So that's 25% more tax revenues that are going to be coming in, because we haven't accounted for April, May, and June, I guess it is. Maybe even March, maybe 4 months. I think the money's there. You're talking about $5 million, I think, on the highest of the scales. You already got 600,000. So now we're at 4.4. right? You pay these police and firemen and these city workers what's on that scale for option one. This lady right here that works in human resources, she's probably gonna have a whole lot less work. Because I went through this with the radio operators 16 years ago. They were the lowest paid around. Check the history. We replaced radio operators on a regular basis because we wasn't paying them well. We changed that. Guess what? Now we got operators been here 20 years, 25 years. Can't hardly get that job unless somebody retires. They don't leave that job to go get more money, for the most part. They're gonna always leave the jail to get on the road. Young officers working that jail, they want to work on the road. That's just the facts. But it's time that the city takes the lead. You know, I'm the first one to say after we have a parade the next morning, you can ride this city and you don't even know a parade happened that day, that night before. The workers get out there and bust their butt. Go to Slidell. That's not true. You're gonna see beads and everything else on the ground. These employees for the city work hard. I know they do in the police department, but we cannot continue to swim against the current. We just can't do it. Our staffing, we have staffing issues daily. I know that's not what we all want, but that's what's happening. I'm giving it to you. We continue with low salary, we're gonna continue with these problems. Only thing I'm asking is that when y'all review all of these numbers, I've reviewed the police departments. On option one, I didn't even really look at 2 and 3, to be honest with you, because I just felt like option one is where we needed to be, and that's where the city needs to be, because when these people come to work, instead of looking or focusing on another job, they'll be focusing on what their job is and do the best they can for that day. Please, I ask you, consider that, think about it, and think about option one, because I think option one, we haven't had a pay raise, by the way, and since Nikki Muscarell and that group been council members.
2005.
Okay, so that's been a while. So we can say 30, 40, 50%. When you haven't had a raise in 17 years, I would hope the percentages are high. So I just ask that y'all review option one, the differences in the pay ranks, that's already out, I think all in there. If not, it's just a minor tweak to get that in there. That's not a big deal with the percentages for the ranks. The big deal is the starting salary, I can tell you. And just like some of our lieutenants came up here before you tonight, they deserve to get that money. They've been here a while. The sergeants, they deserve it too. Everybody does. I thank you for your time. I hope that you would consider option one. I would love for you to vote tonight. I don't know what's the delay, to be honest with you. But in any event, please keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
I will just say from a housekeeping standpoint, if we do option one, right now the police and fire are in on their grids on option one because we knew we could not break state law. So option one has police and fire according to the grids on option one. The rest of the employees, those are the other positions that we're talking about, don't go in any sort of pay grade. If we go with option one, there are some positions that were valued lower that you need to make a decision on as to what Councilman Wells keeps saying, and I appreciate what you're saying because I agree with you 100%. I think everybody should get a raise, and so there are a few positions in there that don't have any raise because they were suggested to be too low. And they're not, and I'm not talking about a department head or anybody on the higher end. I'm talking about the other values there. The second thing I'll say is that in options 2 and 3, some of what we tried to do was even out some of that. So what we could do, and I appreciate this is why we wanted to have this discussion, and I appreciate how many people have come out to have this discussion because I think it's really significant and important. But we wanted to hear kind of where you're leaning. We can nuance these how we need to ensure that everybody feels like they're coming out of this whole and fair and that they've been treated consistently and fairly.
Well, from what all I heard and what's going on, sir, Mr. Angelo, I talk to you a lot. You give me a lot of advice, and I'm ready to vote on it now. So, I'm only one vote, but I'm ready to vote now, and I thank you, sir. Thank you. And I trust and believe everything that you say.
Just to reiterate, so under option 1, everybody does not get a raise.
No, in the police department they do, but not in the city.
But all citywide departments don't.
Because it puts them at the regional average. So you have some employees in the city that are already at the regional average.
I mean, we don't need to keep going back and forth. I mean, we know option 1, you already talked about it, going with what Nola said, what Mr. Angelo said. I'm prepared.
And I just gave you some additional ideas there. If you want everybody to have some sort of minimum raise, then we can go through and do that.
Okay, so if we was to vote on this tonight, to bring that to where it needs to be for those that are not getting a raise, we would have to come back and address that individually?
You could wrap it into the way that you word the vote. What you would be doing is introducing a budget amendment to implement the option 1, and then you could say, but we would like a minimum raise of this percentage for every employee. Or you could, say for the majority of employees, except the highest paid people, or whatever, however you want to do it. You've got options.
My only concern with this is that we keep going back to the fact that option 1 isn't on the grid. I'm fine with the numbers. I have no problem there. But and I get that fire and police have to be in a grid, and they are in a grid in option 1. Great. But do other departments want to be in a grid? And if we pass this and then they're not, is that a problem, right?
It is going to be really the person who's going to have the most challenge with implementing it will be the accounting department. Because we'll have to go through and individually, and the HR department. And so every time that an anniversary comes up or every time that a promotion comes up, we'll have to double and triple and quadruple check the math to make sure that we're straight.
You'll earn your raise.
But again, like I said, one solution for that is offering every employee, here's your 30 steps, here's your starting pay, here's your 30 steps, basically according to what HR NOLA has said.
Remember, as what happened with the fire department when we went through their grid and cleaned it up a few years back, those that didn't get a raise were already at the average. They were already at the pay scale. Same thing here.
Yes, ma'am.
Tracy Wells, 610 Mooney Avenue. I just have a question on page 43 about the compa ratios. I heard Dr. Landrum mention that some of the employees are below market, but you also have some employees that are above market. And one of the young men asked about, and I'm not picking on any one office, but the building official, for example. His compa ratio is 1.67. And when I looked in the report itself, on page 14 for HR NOLA, and for the numbers that they have, even at the highest top of suggested is 65,000. So what do you do in the case where you have employees who are way above market versus those who are below market? So I don't know if that's for HR or for that.
We may both need to answer that. So first thing is when HR NOLA established a salary range, they went 10% below and 10% higher of the middle point that they were trying to achieve there. So
the 25th percentile.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So our grid goes for 30 years, so it's a larger, longer-term grid. So all of our all of our salary ranges go higher than what HR NOLA has established. If you want to explain more what the compa ratio means and how that is significant in the report, that may help answer Ms. Wells' question as well.
Absolutely. The compa ratio normally is based on the midpoint of the salary of the range. Because we use the 25th percentile as the midpoint for setting our suggested salaries, we used the 25th percentile as the basis for the compa ratio. So that is not at market rate, but it is an easy way to take a look and see where people are in relation to that 25th percentile midpoint that we suggested originally.
All right, Mr. Angelo, say this here. I'm all in favor for the raise right now.
Let's do it.
But this is what I need, though.
Make a motion.
This is what I need. I need the police department to come to District 3. And you know what? And I'm going to tell you, it's so funny. See, yeah, I hear y'all talking, but this is what you don't understand. Yeah, it's funny. You know, and this is what's so sad about it, that I don't get the police department in District 3 like we should. And we know the crime. We know the gun violence. All this I've been crying about, I've been talking about 79, 82, 85-year-old citizens coming up here at the council meeting talking about, asking me why we don't see the police department, why we don't do this here. And you and I, we talk, you know, and that's all I ask for. I mean, from day one, since I've been a city council, what I ask for, just let the police be present in District 3. So I don't need hand claps. I don't need frowns. I don't need smile. From day one, I just ask be fair across the board. You had a gun shooting in downtown.
Right.
And this is what I saw. Police officers on motorcycles with the lights on. I saw over 10 units downtown. And see, I don't go by what nobody say. I look for myself. The same thing you get downtown, I ask for District 3.
I got you.
That's all I ask for. You know, let's be fair across the board. You know, security, you know, details, everything that y'all ask for, everything that y'all want. You know, I'm your #1 supporter.
Right.
You know, I ain't gonna say all y'all, but I'm your #1 supporter.
Now listen, we appreciate it, Councilman Wells, and you know, we can always try to do better, and we try to do better every day. We do, and we've had a lot of shootings lately. It's kept us busy. It really has. And you know, I'm in your neighborhood quite a bit.
Yes.
So you know, I know what you're talking about. Again, I'm not making any excuses, but when you're down a lot of people and you're having trouble getting people to work, it's difficult. It becomes very difficult. Morale gets very low. It gets to be a big problem, you know. So that's what we're working on. I mean, we work on it every day. We work on it every day. It's not something that we don't talk about. We talk about it on a regular basis, you know, to try to listen, we don't want one round shot in the city. I know everybody that lives in this city has heard shots fired. And for the first time in my life, I live in a house that's got vinyl siding, and I heard shots fired. I'm ready to get on the floor.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, man, I was living in a brick house. Now these rounds are going to come right through this vinyl, you know.
And that's all I ask for, you know, just like you say, the morale, y'all down officers.
Right.
And y'all was down officers when the gunshot took place downtown. So we were still down officers.
Right.
You know, we had a house fire. Guess what? Right across the street from me. All the firemen came out. You know, they did what they supposed to do. So I don't know if they down in employees. That's all I ask for is the service. And I'm talking about from now to forever. I'm going to always ask for the same service you give downtown, District 3 needed. That's all I ask for.
I agree with you. I think you're right. I think you're 100% right.
Lacey, question.
Hold up, sir. Sir, you need to come to the front. We ain't just in the audience, just running off at the mouth now. Yeah, man, they voted for me to be up here. Shoot.
My question with this, again, with the option to make sure we get everybody included. I understand that maybe when you go back and look at it, some folks might be where they need to be and they might not get it. But the option will be there for that. It'll be stated in a motion for it.
What if we,
Yes,
what if we said even at a minimum, everyone gets at least a 2%? Even those who are over that they should be, even those that come in at, there's a couple, like one or two that's 0.99%, you know, that way it's at least the 2% raise that is standard, and it's a way to make sure that everyone gets a raise. That's just a number I'm throwing out because it's in the past. In addition to that, I have a question, not to fuddle the issue, but IT, certain areas, they have certain departments have car allowances. I understand we're taking them away, but certain departments actually do use their cars quite a bit. Yeah.
They can turn in mileage for reimbursement.
Okay. I've heard that that could be an issue, so I'm just putting that out there. We may have an issue at some point with that.
The council can choose to do what they want to do with it.
Yeah.
I know it was an issue last year, and so we tried to address it. This study comes back based on salary. It doesn't come back with salary plus car or whatever, you know, it comes back based on that. And so if there are certain positions that you want to do that for, you always have that prerogative.
Right.
But I think in general, when we were having that discussion, we were looking at it and saying there are some positions that this just doesn't
make sense for.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
Anyone else have any questions?
Let me follow up just a second on kind of both of y'all's question there. You could see it as, yes, this study is suggesting that some positions are where they should be. But as you have heard from many people here, there has not been a cost of living adjustment in years. So you could look at a minimum amount at being a cost of living adjustment, especially given the inflation climate that we are in now.
Yeah, I guess when I see some of them maybe have either hardly any or $300 or $400, I think there's a couple of them, and then you got others that have $20,000. I mean, it's kind of morale-wise, I don't think that would be a good thing for the city workers. So, I mean, that was something I saw whenever you had such a lower percentage on some of these.
Yeah, I think at least a 2% to make sure that everybody gets something.
Yes, yeah.
Those were based off the 25th percentile also, so that I would not.
You're not married to
Be
that.
at market. I would just consider that to be at the midpoint that we chose for budgetary reasons.
Okay. So, thank you, Lacey, for answering my question. All right, so we're going to move forward here with the motion of approving the budget here with the option one, with the
Andre.
2%.
Let me say, Councilman, if there's an effort to actually make a motion to adopt something or approve something, you need to amend the agenda, because the only thing on the agenda is just the review of the pay
Okay.
study. So
All right.
if
So make a motion to
amend
amend the
you wanna
agenda.
add something for a
Okay.
vote,
All right.
then you should amend the agenda to add whatever item is you want to vote on.
Sorry, Andre, is this a resolution or is this an ordinance?
What's the motion?
If we're going to adopt number one.
Well, are you going to amend the budget? I mean,
Well,
that's
that
the thing.
obviously would have to be introduced, but do we do a resolution to adopt this?
Resolution would be, for example, what the will of the council is to the administration. We want to have funds appropriated for a pay study that gives some minimum raise. It looks like all the numbers are going to need to be adjusted, so it's hard to, I'm just listening to the conversation. It may be hard to just implement this in one fell swoop, just as options.
Let me make a stab at it. I make a motion to amend the agenda to add a resolution adopting option one of HR NOLA with a minimum of 2% raise for anyone who does not meet that 2% threshold. And that way, we're telling the administration that's our will, We still have to do a budget item for that, of course, but would that work?
Yes. Now, again, it doesn't appropriate money, but
Right.
it does express to the administration what the will of the council is.
My next amendment will be to introduce an item.
I second that motion.
Andre, I want to say this here. When this raise, of the administration, when this raise supposed to start?
We can start it as soon as we have the budget money appropriated.
Next meeting.
Okay. I suggest this here. Since these people been looking for their money a long time, and Christmas done passed by, why we can't take it back to January this year, give them their money? Because I'm talking about, Mr. Angelo, all the years of service, and we're going back and forth. Take it back to January, instead of waiting till the budget. Give them their money now. That's what I suggest, starting in January of this year. So I don't want to wait till the budget. I mean, we hear everybody talking. Give them their money starting in January. Go back, start in January. Give them their money, the first of the year of 2022.
Andre, is there a specific way that we would need to word that motion in order to have it pass the muster of the opinions that we have looked at in the past regarding donations and back pay?
Yes.
Could we say that because this study has been
Under review. For years. Now, let me just say, it's subject to issues. Anytime you go retroactive with any kind of payment, whether it's to employees or others, there are issues. So I'm not going to tell you that it's not, could not be challenged. But if it's the will of the council to say we want this, considering this issue has been discussed and addressed prior to January 1st, to have it effective January 1st, you could do that. If it gets challenged, it gets challenged.
Can we do this, the first thing I suggested, and then have that be a bonus? Have a
Bonus is a
separate-
bonus is a
Good
problem.
word.
I mean,
Okay.
bonus
Just a word.
to the yeah, I mean, to the effect it's retroactive. It could be a one-time payment. A one-time payment.
For potentially work performed in the rest of the fiscal
Well,
year?
it really becomes almost a one-time payment for retention.
I just
Right,
don't,
it's not
I
really
just
for
don't want
past
someone to
service.
challenge what this is going forward, right? So if we
Well-
had it as two separate things, we wouldn't have to worry about anything going forward being at issue.
Well, if you're looking for a one-time payment for retention, that's a little easier to defend than a payment for past services.
Okay.
So payment for past services is where an issue becomes legally being able to do that. If it's more of a retention payment, that's easier to defend.
And
So basically what you're doing is you're making a payment to retain your employees in the future.
And if we went down that road, we wouldn't have to worry about from January to present, employees that may no longer work here.
Correct, correct.
What if we asked the administration to present a retention payment based on their calculations? It's just a suggestion. I want this to go forward without an issue. I don't want to get mixed up in a
Clean.
prior payments that might be a
Yes,
problem.
payment for past services is where you get into trouble legally, and that's the issue. If you make it as a retention payment, that's really to retain their future services. That's easier to defend.
We can't give anyone any money tomorrow anyway. We have to introduce a budget item.
Yeah, and look, we ran into this with the the redistricting. There's a 7-day layover period from the time you introduce it
It has
to final adoption. So if you, and from publication, not from the time you vote on it. And the Daily Star doesn't run every day.
Nope.
So there's going to
We
be
won't
some
make it for
delay.
next Tuesday.
No, there's going to be some delay. But you got to start at a starting point. And the starting point could be introduction tonight. Then it'll have to be published. And then the waiting period, 7-day waiting period before final adoption.
I'm going to ask that we move forward with the amended agenda, the amendment to the agenda, adopting option, telling the administration we want to adopt option 1 with a minimum 2% increase if it doesn't reach that threshold. And then perhaps we can look at a COVID bonus or something like that in a separate resolution.
Second.
COVID pay, I'm sorry, I just want to say COVID pay is something that may be a good choice of wording to use.
Yep.
Since there are many other entities looking at COVID pay or hazard pay related to that.
Let's do that next. So we'll,
Third that motion.
we've amended.
I mean, Lacey, you keeping, obviously, the meeting's being recorded. We don't have our minute
Yeah.
taker, but
So we've
the
amended
meeting
the
is being
agenda.
recorded.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll
Yeah.
know exactly what,
Yes.
okay.
Now
And
I'm,
amend the
I'm
agenda.
typing fastidiously, trying to make sure.
and now I make a motion to adopt that
Well, is there
resolution
a- has
as
it been-
amended.
Well, we need to have a vote.
Oh, we didn't vote on it.
the
Yeah,
amendment.
yeah, sorry.
I have Gonzalez making the first motion, Wells making the second.
Yes.
So
Oh.
This is the amendment.
to amend the agenda, this is just to amend the agenda for the resolution, correct?
Correct.
To implement option 1 with a minimum of a 2% increase.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll call roll call now. Councilman Andrews,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councilman Wells.
Aye.
Councilman Divatorio.
Aye.
Councilman Leon. Aye. The motion passes to amend the agenda.
Make a motion to adopt as introduced.
Well, this is,
It's not a resolution.
this is a
Sorry, it's not an
resolution.
amendment.
Well, this is the resolution, right? Because
Yes.
your ordinance is going to be to amend the budget as
Right.
necessary to fund this, I think, it sounds like.
Make a motion to approve that resolution as amended.
Second.
Okay, I have the first for Gonzalez and the second for Andrews. We'll do roll call. President Andrews.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councilman Wells.
Aye.
Councilman Divatorio.
Aye.
Councilman Leon.
Now make a motion, do you want to do COVID pay first or introduce the
Oh.
COVID?
Do you want to name it yet? I mean, is it best to name that or just keep it as a,
Supplemental
as a,
Well,
as
you
a
have.
a retention,
Yeah, I
just
mean,
leave
needs
it
to
as
be
a
for-
retention
It needs
instead
to be
of,
really for future services, right? So, I mean, the COVID stuff is sort of all over the place. Everybody's looking into that. But to me, what's easier to defend is your payment is for retention.
Yes.
Basically, to keep your employees working in the future. Not so much for past performance, but to keep them here. Then you can deal with, salaries in your
I
budget.
like the way that sounds better.
Yes.
So I make a motion to amend,
The
to
agenda.
add to the agenda, to add a resolution instructing the
Administration.
to the administration to present a retention payment option to the council,
Second.
because they have to calculate it.
Yes.
Okay, so the resolution on the floor is to amend the agenda for the administration to present to the council a retention payment, a one-time retention payment.
Yes.
Okay, the motion was made by Gonzalez. Do I have a second?
Andrews, right? Yeah.
Thank y'all. Sorry, trying to type and keep up with all this at the same time.
See, now you see why the secretary need to make money, see?
See why the director of administration needs me.
Yeah, you got it up there.
Okay, we'll go forward with roll call. This is to amend the agenda for the resolution. Councilman Andrews.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councilman Wells.
Aye.
Councilman Divatorio.
Aye.
And Councilman Leon.
Aye.
So that's to amend the agenda with the resolution.
Motion to amend to introduce a budget
So
ordinance?
amend it. Now you have to
Now you got to
adopt the
vote on the
resolution.
resolution.
Yeah.
Vote on.
What happens when we make things
Carly
up as we go?
Gonzalez makes that motion.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Second.
To approve the resolution.
Move the resolution as amended.
Got it. Okay, roll call. Councilman Andrews.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councilman Wells.
Aye.
Councilman Divatorio.
Aye.
Councilman Leon.
Aye.
That was the resolution to have the administration prepare for the council a one-time retention payment.
Yes.
Now would you like to introduce a budget amendment?
Yep.
Introduce an ordinance, amend the agenda. to
Introduce an ordinance to amend the budget.
Amend the budget as necessary to
Implement the
implement the
resolution.
prior resolutions.
Make a motion to amend the agenda to introduce an ordinance for a budget amendment in the amount necessary to implement the resolution we just passed.
Second.
This is roll call to amend the agenda with the introduction of the ordinance. Councilman Andrews?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilman Wells?
Aye.
Councilman Divatorio?
Aye.
Councilman Leon?
Aye.
The agenda is amended. Hang on.
Make a
Now
motion-
would you like to
Make
introduce?
a motion to
the-
introduce as set out.
Second.
Roll call, this will be to introduce the ordinance to amend the budget in the amount necessary to implement the resolutions that you have just passed. Councilman Andrews?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilman Wells?
Aye.
Councilman Divatorio?
Aye.
Councilman Leon? We will set public hearing at least 7 days after the amendment publishes, so it will not be on the May 10th meeting. It would be the meeting following that. You can either set a special meeting to pass that, or it would be at the final meeting in May.
Which is May 24th,
May 24th?
unless we have a special meeting before.
No, May 24th.
May 24th.
Yes.
Right. The nonprofit. Yeah, I'm gonna
I'm fine with waiting until Tuesday.
Lord,
I wanna wait till two, discuss the nonprofit.
are we adjourning?
It's just gonna be a general.
Well,
Unless we have-
some of them in here.
Are they here?
Some of them in here.
Okay.
Discussion is gonna be basically for us and how we gonna decide to do things. I wasn't gonna open it up before. But-
Administration. That's administration.
Yeah. Yeah. For the tent, the next one? Yeah. Okay, all right.
We're still in session, just a reminder.
Remove this, and we'll discuss it at the next meeting.
Table it or
All right,
table it
okay.
till the next one?
Hold one more. We're still in general session here. We have one more item on the agenda that we're going to make a. We have one more item here on the agenda for discussion up for nonprofits. We're going to go ahead and table this item. We're going to get a motion to table this item and bring it up on our May 10th?
Yes.
May 10th meeting.
Make a motion to table this until May 10th.
Second.
Okay, the only thing I'll point out there is then what we could do in the proposed budget, since you're going to get the proposed budget that same night, we could just use the similar numbers from last year, and then the council would have the option to amend those numbers as we go forward.
That sounds like a plan.
And so I'll just try to get from the nonprofit some of their final kind of report numbers, their outcomes that we like to get each year, since we haven't done any of that yet. So
Okay.
we'll try to get that put together. And even if that's not presented in your budget binder, we'll get that to you as quickly as we can within the next week or so.
Okay.
So Gonzalez made the first motion to table it, and I think Andrews made the second.
Yes.
Roll call. Councilman Andrews?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilman Wells?
Aye.
Councilman Divatorio? And Councilman Leon?
Aye.
Can I get a motion for a meeting to adjourn?
So moved.
Meeting adjourned.
All in favor?
Aye.